Let's go!
Hello, everybody! The time is here, and I am so excited. Don't mind me just screaming, because I am hype right now. Hello! Welcome, everybody. Welcome to my TED Talk. Today's the day. The sun is shining. The tank is clean. We are doing our 60 follower reward. It is going to be a Genshin Impact lore stream, and boy, do I have some information prepared for y'all. I have been thank you for responding. My tank is clean. Thank you. I'm hoping there won't be a ton of lag today. We'll see how my internet does. It's been a little bit iffy, but I'm just so excited. I just feel like screaming. Oh my gosh. But welcome. I literally have been so nervous all morning. I don't even know why, but I've been so nervous. I've been like shaking all morning, but like in a good way. Hello, Keenedge. Let's see who we got in chat right now. We have Fighter Felix, welcome. We have Keenedge. We have Kendiana. Who else we got? Yep, that's what we got. Thank you for being here. I appreciate y'all. Welcome. Thanks to everybody who's lurking. You guys are the best. Ren, thank you for being here. Hello. Wow. Oh my gosh. Thank you for the turnout. But yes. Okay. So we're going to be talking about Genshin Impact today. Just to preface this, I'm planning on talking through is the one and only VIP here. I gotta assign my VIPs. I just haven't. K-Hawk, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited. I hope you're excited as well. I've been so nervous that I'm gonna bore y'all to death, so I really hope I don't bore you. I've been working hard on this presentation. Hype for my TED Talk. Thank you. And I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. For those of you, there's going to be a little bit of something for everything. For those of you who aren't familiar with Genshin Impact, you can still learn a lot. And I'll be explaining some basic stuff because we're talking, you don't have to have a ton of knowledge in terms of Genshin lore now. Because we're going to be, like, what's happening in game now, We're going to be talking about the beginning of Genshin Impact, the beginning of the timeline. So that's what we're talking. It's kind of broken up by eras. So we'll be talking like the old world era is what it's referenced as, all the way up to pre-Archon War era. So we will not be covering the Archon War. We're gonna have to save that for another lore stream because that would just be too much. There's so much information we're gonna go over, but it's gonna be great. Jasper, thanks for so much for being here. Hello, everybody. Hello. So yes, I have a Prezi that I have made for everybody to help you stay more visually connected rather than me just talking at you. So hopefully we'll have no technical difficulties. I was a little bit late starting because I was trying to I forgot that I would totally have to rearrange my screen for you guys to see because my camera was right over all the text. And I was like, well, I didn't think this through, did I? So yes, but we're gonna be, the VIP, our one and only VIP. Hey, I got more VIPs out there. I'm just lazy and I haven't assigned it, okay? So I'm sorry to all my VIPs out there who I haven't assigned a badge to. One day I'll do it. One day. Well, before we get started, I hope everybody's been having a great week, a great day. It's looking like it's gonna be a beautiful weekend, and a great day for some Genshin lore. I hope you'll have questions, and you know what? If you don't, that's fine. Please feel free to engage. I don't need to just talk at you guys the whole time. I mean, which is not going to happen, but if I'm saying something and you're either a pro Genshin expert and you're like, hey, that's something that I know about, and I found this tidbit out, let's talk about it, you know? If you're like, hey, that's not what I read in this lore piece, let's talk about it, because Genshin, I will say, has done an excellent job at staying pretty consistent with their lore. And I'll touch on this, but there have been some times where my brain was just hurting because I was like, there are some conflicting resources that I found that say one thing or say another thing, and it doesn't make sense. And we'll talk on that. So if you see something where you're like, hey, I noticed this resource says this instead of what you're telling me, then I'd love to hear it, because I didn't have time to look through every single quest and every single resource in Genshin. Didn't have time for that, but I tried my best to do a good overview. Shout out to all the unassigned VIPs. I'm sorry. Maybe I'll think about it after we do the lore stream. Okay, so everybody take a minute. I gotta shake it off. I'm shaking right now because I'm just very excited. I am like a chihuahua. I'm just shaking with excitement. I gotta get my snacks ready. I brought a whole bag of apricots because I'm gonna need a snack while we do this. And the drink of the day, everybody, is coffee. So that's what we're drinking today to help me, because I already have so much energy. Let's get some more energy going. Let's see. Sorry, I gotta text someone to tell them I'm streaming because I know they want to be here. Okay, perfect. Are you guys ready for some Genshin lore? I feel like this is what usually happens when I do a presentation. It's gonna take me a couple minutes of stuttering to really get my brain going. So as I said, here's some rules. There are no rules. Well, not really rules, but ask questions if you want to ask questions, because I would love to have some interaction if anybody has any thoughts or anything, rather than me just talking at my camera the whole time. Running game! Hello! Glad you made it. Rules are made to be broken. Thank you, Stell, and thank you, Kalis, for that. Let's see, yes. I guess I don't really have any rules, but interact. Don't be afraid to interact. Don't be afraid to ask me questions. Don't be afraid to make comments, because we're going to be going through a lot. Tell me if you guys need a brain break, and we'll take a little pause. I honestly have no idea how long this will take me. If it doesn't take me that long, I figure we could just hop into some Genshin. If it takes me forever, we're committed. It's going to be another Halo 8-hour stream, I don't think it'll take that long. I do think it'll take probably 3 hours. So, without further ado, should we get going? I'll have a little music playing in the background. So let's see. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit, and we'll get going. Here in the park with two friends saying hello. Oh, you guys, what a beautiful day for the park. What a beautiful day. That's fantastic. Hello, friends. Hello. Have to ask, what are we doing? Oh yes, running game, if you missed it, we are going to be doing what we call a Genshin Impact lore stream. So Genshin Impact has a bunch of history. And we're going to be talking through just a little portion of that history today. This was our reward for hitting 60 followers, which I will say, if you notice, I have 59 right now. I lost a follower. It's okay. It happens. Followers ebb and flow, but we did hit it, so I'm still rewarding the fact that we hit it. So that is what we're doing. This is our reward for hitting 60 followers. So hopefully you guys spread the word and we can keep having fun lore streams. We don't count here. Yeah, who cares? We're just doing this for funsies. It was really just an excuse to do this. You know what I mean? I've wanted to do a Genshin lore stream. It's just been... There's just so much information, it's kind of hard to, like, wrap your head around. So, okay, let me get my life going here. Let me get my presentation up. Yes, 1 second. I get this going. I have a little notes sheet, so I have like bullet points, but a lot of what I'm gonna say is like verbally. Like a lot of the information I'm gonna give you is verbally, but I do have like little bullet points on the presentation just so you guys can kind of keep track of the main things happening during an event. But yes, let me know, like I said, if you need me to clarify something. That's good. Good. This up. Put it on full screen. Oh man, I'm excited, you guys. Let's see if I can switch to the right tab. Oh yes. Here we are, everybody. Is it okay? I had to make it a little bit smaller to fit my camera. I didn't really know where to fit my camera. And it was like gonna stay one size just because of the size of the presentation. Yes, I have included my little mini matchas everywhere, so see if you can spot the matchas, because sometimes I made them pretty small and they're hiding. So it's a fun, also, there's a fun little interactive game of find the matchas. I should have counted it. Not like I had an award or anything, or a reward or anything for people who guessed how many, or like who saw how many matchas there are. Should have, that would have been fun. But it's a fun little game for you to keep you engaged. How many matchas are there? I have them hidden all over the slides, so keep an eye out for the matchas. But yes, okay! Welcome to my TED Talk. We are gonna be reward equals VIP assignment. Oh my gosh, you're right. But the funny thing is, I don't even know how many. Well, that's fine. I'll just go back and count them. So, there you go. That's your reward. You get a VIP assignment if you guess, or if you not guess, but if you count how many matchas there are and you catch all of them. And then you have to tell me at the end how many matchas there are, and at the end, I will. Well, probably later. Next stream, I'll announce who got it. But then that's kind of cheating, because if one person says the answer, and then everybody just says that answer. Like, if there's 9 of them, and then someone puts 9, and then everybody puts 9. Oh, well. You know what? I was going to hand out VIP assignments anyway. And it's all my VIPs here. Okay. Let's get started, because we have a lot to do. We will have some short brain breaks, probably where we all just stare at a wall, in between the eras, because it's a lot of information, and it's going to be like drinking from a fire hose. Here's one thing you need to know. Prepare your emotional damages. Get those ready. You know, got your trigger finger on the emotional damage button, because there's a lot in here. It's really not that bad, but there are some, you know, because we're talking, like when we get to the era of darkness and all the civilizations are destroyed, you know, that's where you're kind of like, yeah, that's a little bit rough, right? So, second thing, for those who do play Genshin, there could possibly be some spoilers, so just be aware. I don't talk a ton about Fontaine, just because information is still coming out about Fontaine. So it was easier for me to just kind of talk. I think I include a little, I know I include a little bit of Fontaine lore that we've found. But for the most part, I just kind of take it all the way up to Sumeru, because it was just easier to do it that way, since we have all this, like, literally 4.1 just dropped, so we have so much more information that's coming out. But there is a couple little spoiler things for the Archon quest that just happened, so if you do play Genshin Impact, just let you know there are spoilers. And I also indicated it in my stream title that there will be spoilers, even though we're talking about the beginning of time. So the 4 sections we're going to be talking about today are going to be the Old World era, the New World era, the era of darkness, and then the pre-Archon War era. We are going to be spending the bulk of our time during the era of darkness, because that is kind of when everything happens. You know, talk about the calm before the storm. It's just everything happens in the era of darkness, and it all happens in pretty quick succession. So it'll sound like it might have taken like 400 years during the Era of Darkness. We don't have, that's the last thing I'll say and then we'll get started. And we don't have exact timelines, like, other than we know in the Era of Darkness, you know, like when Morax is born, that's essentially our first timeline marker because we know he was born approximately 6,000 years ago. So I will say, I couldn't tell you, you know, this happened 15,000 years ago or a billion years ago. I don't have that information. It's not listed. The only timeline, like actual, like we can start kind of dating things is when Morax is born, which is approximately 6,000 years ago. And that's like to the date of the game, right? So that's kind of what I mean by when I give you it. If I do give you a timestamp, it's like to the date of the game, or events before the game, right? That's what I'll probably say. This all happened before the start of the game of Genshin Impact. So without further ado, if nobody has any questions or anything, I think we'll just go ahead and get started. So, welcome to the old world of Genshin Impact, right? There are pictures. Obviously, we don't have any pictures of the old world, so I just did some pictures of things looking pretty rough. Broken down buildings and whatnot. There's 3 subtopics we're going to talk about here. We have the 7 Sovereign. Genshin time travel win. That would be too much. That would be too much. I don't know what I do. All the wibbly wobbly timey wimey stuff. Okay. So here let me paint you a picture. First of all, we don't know. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you what we're talking about. We're talking about the 7 Sovereign. You'll know what those are in a second. Or what is called before the Sun and Moon. This is the time that's referenced before Sun and Moon. Then we're going to talk about the Eternal Throne of Heavens, or the time when the doves held the branches. And then we're going to talk about the time 40 years after the held branches. I know that means nothing to y'all now, but by the end of this, it'll mean something. So I gotta switch back up. Okay, to start with, let's talk about the 7 Sovereign, right? So the 7 Sovereign, let me paint you a picture. We don't know when the beginning of the world was, of Teyvat, right? Which technically there's more than Teyvat in the world, but that's kind of what we call it, is Teyvat, right? But we don't know when the world began in Genshin Impact. There's no information on that. It kind of just was like, it was there. And at this point, which is what is considered the old world, we have what are known as the 7 Sovereign. And I know this was specifically asked by one of my followers that we talk about this, so this is for you who asked for this. So the 7 Sovereign were 7 primordial dragons. Exactly, Keenedge. 7 primordial dragons, like, comprised of pure elements. They were pure primordial elemental beings, right? And at this time in the world, the land was all entirely, like, whatever land there was, it was all pure elements. So think, you know, for pyro, it's based on the elements that, like, we know of today and utilize. So if you think pyro, like, the land was covered in lava. We have, you know, lava. There was frozen parts of the world. There was areas where it was all thunderstorms and oceans and wind, and then there was, you know, jagged earth, and it was not a great place to be. And at this point, we have the 7 Sovereigns, so dragons and the bishops, which are like the baptismal bishops, which are like kind of a form of a little dragon for those who don't know what a bishop is. They ruled over the world, and it was honestly a terrible time to be around. From what information we have, it was a pretty awful time to be around. So like I said, they were 7 dragons of pure elemental dragons, comprised of each of the 7 elements, which is going to be pyro. I'm not going to list them all, but, you know, pyro, dendro, electro, and so on. They were like the Archons in that sense, but ruled over each element in each area of the land. And from, like I said, not a great time to be around. Now, I have the pictures that kind of correlate with this, but there are 2 dragons, 7 Sovereigns, that we currently know of. So, for instance, and we'll talk about kind of the demise of the Seven Sovereign. But right now, in the story up to date, we know that Apep, who is right here in this top left corner, is the the seventh sovereign, no, one of the sovereigns, I'll say, of Dendro. So that is, Apep is the Dendro sovereign. So Apep is still around. Next, and this is where the spoilers come in, we do know that Neuvillette is the reincarnation of the previous sovereign. Big wormy dragon, not fun. Yeah, pretty scary. We do know that Neuvillette is the reincarnation of the Hydro Sovereign. Which, this, in Fontaine, we actually find information that, I'm gonna call Scylla, possibly, is the previous, Hydro Dragon. The Hydro Dragon. Scylla, 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 was the previous Hydro Dragon. Now, we don't know much about that, but in some of my research, it was actually predicted in Enkanomiya, when we'll talk about Enkanomiya, but jumping ahead a little bit, that the next Hydro Sovereign would actually be in humanoid form. So that was actually a prophecy from Enkanomiya. So, interesting that we're just finding out in Fontaine that Neuvillette is indeed the reincarnation of the previous sovereign, Scylla, who is the Hydro Sovereign. And let's see. Okay, so that is Neuvillette. Next we have, who is not listed because we don't have a picture of him. This is the third the third Seven Sovereign that we know about, but we don't have any images of, which is Nibelung. I'll call him Nibelung, maybe. Nibelung. Would it be helpful to y'all if I, like, typed these names in chat? I don't know if it would. Just let me know if it would, because there's a lot of, like, names that we're going to be talking about that I'll probably butcher in pronouncing. Okay, but we have Nibelung, or Nibelung, who is known as the Dragon King. We don't know what he was the sovereign of, but we do know that he was considered the, like, king of the sovereign. So let me put this. So we'll put Scylla, which is the Hydro. And then we have Nibelung, which is the Dragon King. Nibelung? There you go. Okay, so we have Scylla and Nibelung. I'm gonna just go with Nibelung, but don't get on my case, because if I'm butchering the words. Okay. So, let me get back on track here. We have Nibelung. So this is what it said. So this is, let me just give you this knowledge we have. So Apep in Nahida's Story Quest Act 2, we're speaking with Apep, who is the Dendro Sovereign, right? And essentially Apep says, it's a long story. We all once believed in the distant past that only forbidden knowledge could give us enough power to defeat the heavenly principles. Things we'll talk about later. But Apep then goes on to say, the Dragon King Nibelung acquired the power of darkness from outside of this world and led us in a fight against the orders established by the outsiders. We'll talk more about that, but that's important, so think about that, right? So this is where we get proof, though, that Nibelung is considered the Dragon King, and there's more information that goes on to talk about how he was the king of the sovereign. He led the Seven Sovereign and the bishops and other dragons at that point into war. Next, we have Ajdaha. Ajdaha is speculated. We have no definitive proof, but is speculated to possibly be the Geo Sovereign, though you can give or take, since we don't have any, concrete information or any resources that say, he is the Geo Sovereign. But there is speculation that he could possibly be the Geo Sovereign. If you look into his story more, that's something you can think about. Okay, so next, I know it's a little bit out of order, but we have Alinus, who is present in Fontaine. We found more information about Alinus or Alinus. Might be helpful, let me see. So, we have Ajdaha. We have Ashtaha, Elinus, who is just a dragon. That's what I was going to point out. So Elinus is a dragon, who is not one of the 7 sovereigns. So this is actually debated, just to kind of clarify, because there's some other dragons we know of in the story. Elinus is not 7 sovereign. We find out in the story quest where we meet Elinus that he was actually created by Rheindotter, or also known as Gold, who was an alchemist in the times of Conria. Also stuff we'll talk about. But he was created by Rheindotter. And then we also have Dvalin, who's going to be the bottom right corner, who is one of the 4 winds of Mondstadt. So Dvalin, also not a 7 sovereign. We do have confirmation that he's not a 7 sovereign, but we don't actually know where he came from at this point. We have no information on that. But we know he was not a creation of Rheindotter, and we know he was not a 7 sovereign. So he's a little bit mysterious. And then lastly, we have Durin. So Durin was also a creation of Gold, or Rheindotter. He came about during the times of the Conrians. So that is the 7 sovereign. Like I said, we only know of 3, but we only have 2. We've only met 2 of the sovereigns. We know of a 3rd, which is Nibelung. And then the other ones are either alchemical creations by Rheindotter, or Dvalin being a mystery. So, okay. Lastly, the 7 sovereign come from the Vishep realm, or the Light realm, which we'll talk a little bit about the realms later. Okay, any questions on that? Nope, great. Okay, let's keep going. If you do, just tell me in chat and I'll answer, but we'll keep going here. Okay, I forgot you could do that. You can zoom in. Okay. My keyboard will work. Next, we're going to be talking about the Eternal Throne of the Heavens, or the time when the doves held the branches. Okay, so the Eternal Throne of Heavens. So as I said, get that picture in your head of what the world was like, where it was covered in raw elements. It was, the 7 sovereign were pretty terrible, not good people, or not good beings, and everything was very primordial, pure, elemental, not really sustainable for other life forms. And all we know is that at some point in the existence of the reign of the 7 sovereign and the old world, someone called the Eternal Throne of Heaven arrives from another world. Also, for those of you who do play Genshin, known as possibly the Heavenly Principles. So we have one possible, not suggestion, what am I saying? One possible individual who could be the primordial ones, and we get that from a book called Before Sun and Moon, from a section called On Fanes, or the primordial ones. So Fanes is an individual. It says the primordial one may have been Fanes. It had wings and a crown and was birthed from an egg, androgynous in nature, but for the world to be created, the egg's shell had to be broken. However, Fanes, the primordial one, used the eggshell to separate the universe and the microcosm of the world. And that comes from, like I said, a book called Before Sun and Moon from Enkanomiya, which we'll talk more about on. And that book kind of has the whole timeline of the old world. So that's the proof we have that the primordial one could have been an individual named Fanes who had wings and a crown. Which is a little bit of this image that you see here on the top. People have speculated that this could be related to Fanes, the primordial one, because of the wings and crown, which there could be lots of wings and crowns anywhere, but that is one option. So he actually descended, and his whole purpose of descending Fanes was to battle the 7 sovereign. Basically, their reign of terror was needing to come to an end. And so Fanes came down to instigate a war with the 7 sovereign and to try and claim dominion over the land and the sovereign. Is that Paimon's crown? You know what? It could be. I'd have to compare it side by side. So what Fanes did when coming down to battle is Thanes, or the Primordial One, created these 4 shining shades. We don't have a ton of information about this, but we know that these 4 shining shades, alongside the Primordial One, then started a all-out war with the 7 sovereigns, the bishops, and the other dragons, in order to try and claim the land. We only know of 1 shade currently, and it's not fully known. It's not in the sense that there's a resource that is like, Istaroth is a shade, you know? But Istaroth is the one individual. It's strikingly similar to Paimon's crown, but not identical. Okay, that's good to know. Because, I mean, that's a whole other topic. I could talk about that for a while, but there's a whole other topic about who Paimon is and how she's related to the story. And, you know, how she, you know, people have said maybe she's one of the shades, you know, because we don't really know what happened to the shades, which we talk about later, but we don't really know what happened to them. But here's the thing. So we have Istaroth. Istaroth was known by Enkanomiya, which is one of the older civilizations. Like I said, we'll talk about it, but they're huge in this. Enkanomiya really has a lot of influence in this first, you know, this beginning era, this beginning section, all the way up to Pre-Archon War, because they actually, the scribes of Enkanomiya kind of took down the timeline of the old world and the new world and the era of darkness and all that. So that's why a lot of my resources come from Enkanomiya, which is why they're going to be mentioned so often. But they're the individuals who interacted with Istaroth, and was known to be, have an affiliation. So Istaroth was known to have an affiliation with time and wind. She's also called Kairos or Tokoyo Ukami. Those are other names that you'll see in quests she's referred to as. Most often Enkanomiya referred to her as Kairos because they said her name was so holy that they, you know, they dare not utter it. And so they called her Kairos. So Istaroth was worshipped actually in both Mondstadt and Enkanomiya before the Rise of the Seven. So, you know, all the way up until Archon War era. So, and not the 7 sovereign. You'll hear me say there's the 7, which is the 7 archons, which we won't really talk about a ton today because that will be another section. But then the 7 sovereign, which are the dragons. So those are 7, but important to differentiate. So, but yeah, so this is what is speculated by the community. So I found that the shades are speculated to be related to the types of artifacts. So when you, for those who aren't as familiar with Genshin Impact, when you are building your character, you know, leveling your character up, trying to get the character good equipment, you have these things called artifacts that you can attach to your character to make them stronger, essentially. You know, to give them more health, to give them more attack, to give them more defense, you know, crit rate, crit damage, all of that. So if you're familiar with gaming, or even if you're not, it's, you know, it's ideal to making your team stronger. But there are 5 different artifacts that you can equip, and they're all the same in the sense of your, what am I saying? You have different types of artifacts, but they're all the same. I'll just say it and then I'll explain it. So there's 5 types of artifacts, right? You have the Flower of Life, which resembles life. You have the Plume of Death, which stands for, I should say, death. We have the Sands of Eon, which is time. I'm gonna probably butcher this one, but the Goblet of Eonothym, which represents the void. And then you have the Circlet of Logos, which is logic, right? So those are the 5 types of artifacts, and you always have that. So you're always gonna have a flower artifact, you're always gonna have a plume of artifact, which is usually like a feather. You're gonna have some kind of Sands of Eon, which is usually like an hourglass or something like that, or a stopwatch or something to represent time. And those are the artifacts. So it's thought that the 4 shades may have some relation to the artifacts. Now, I did say there are 5 artifacts and 4 shades, so take it as you wish. Or it's thought that possibly, you know, Fanes is one of the, like, the 5 artifacts, one of them is Fanes. So yes. So that is the Eternal Throne of Heavens. The Primordial One are Fanes. Those are the names that I'll kind of talk about. The Eternal Throne of Heavens is also one of Fane's, or the Primordial One's, titles. So when I say Eternal Throne of Heavens, that's who I'm talking about. I usually probably won't use that. I'll usually stick with either Fanes or the Primordial one, but they're the same person, so that's important to remember. But yes, so that's the information that we have based on the Eternal Throne of Heaven and the 4 Shining Shades. So next we're going to go to the time 40 years after the Held Branches. So what that essentially means is 40 years after the Primordial One came to Teyvat. So this is, like I said, 40 years after the Primordial One descended. They finally won the battle against the 7th Sovereign. So that means the battle went on for 40 years between the 7th Sovereign and between the Primordial One and the 4 Shining Shades. So they emerge victorious, and they win dominion over the land, which means that all of the Sovereign's subjects escaped to the ocean, those who were left over. I know a lot of them died. We do know that some of the Sovereigns died in that encounter. But we also do know from other evidence, which I don't have the exact quote, but I know upon reading that the Sovereigns also reincarnate, or a version of that, or they're like reborn. So they technically can't die. They just kind of reiterate into another form. Not reiterate, that's not the right, but they reincarnate, they reborn into another form, as evidenced by Nouvelette. So there's different forms. So, but the originals, we know some of the original Sovereigns died in this encounter, and those who did not die escaped to the, the corners of the world and back into the oceans. For instance, Apep. Apep is one of the Sovereign, and Apep escaped to, eventually ended up in the desert, I would say, because that's where we find Apep. I don't know where Apep escaped to, but Apep escaped, right? And so that kind of started their burning hatred for those who were left over of the Primordial One and of the 4 Shining Shades, which is important later on. So yes, I just saw your message. So 1 made shades to fight dragons. Whoa, 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 whoa. Oh my gosh, story. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Hold up. Let's just take a moment. Story, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the 5 gifted subs. Wow. I don't even know what to do with myself. Oh my gosh. Hold up, you guys. If we get... I can't even. Let me say this. If we get 15 subs today... Okay, let me just say this. This is some incentive for y'all. Let me just say this. We're on the journey to alien isolation. Ta-da! Listen, if we get 2 more subs today, we will hit our 15 sub goal, which means A, we will get more emotes for those who are subbed, and B, we will get our first subscription reward, which I don't even remember what it is right now. I have to look it up. I know it's on my account, but if someone wants to look that up for me, I should know that off the top of my head, but I don't. But I'm just saying, y'all, if we get 2 more subscriptions today, we'll get another emote. I think it's just 1 emote, unfortunately, but it's still another emote. We got plenty of another ones to choose from. And I just realized that my cat is over the top of my chat. I gotta fix that. And subscribes harder. I know. And we'll get another reward. I'm just saying, if you guys are interested. Hold on, you guys. I just realized that I forgot to move my cat in my chat, so I just gotta fix this real quick. So it doesn't bug me. Okay, let me try this. Make chat a little bit long. I'm gonna have to move Matcha. Cat in the chat! We'll just put her here, that's fine. Can I change my subscriber goal right now? I'm gonna do it. Can I do it? Manage goal, here we go. Start new goal? Oh, it's not gonna... Okay, it's automatically doing 20. Maybe I'll put 15. Look, if it's a smaller goal, that's more exciting, right? Okay. Okay, there we go, look! If we get 15 today, I'm just saying. But Story, thank you so much for the 5 gifted. That really does mean a lot to me. Okay, now that I got on that tangent. That is good. Okay. 15 is our next goal. I'm just saying. Here we go. Let me get my stuff back up. Okay. And what were you saying, Keenedge, about... So one made shades to fight dragons and their elemental tyranny. Seems accurate. Yes. Okay, so Keenedge, just to confirm that for you, that's the nice, succinct version of it. Primordial one made the shades, fight the dragons and their elemental tyranny for a better outcome. Like, for, you know, a better world. So to continue on, so they win the battle. And they win dominion over the land. The 7 sovereigns and their subjects, whoever's left alive, escape to the 4 winds, right? Technically, it says they escape into the oceans. And they end up kind of residing in the oceans. Not all of them, but a majority of, like, the bishops and other dragons end up there. So this is actually the result of them winning and gaining dominion over the land is the creation of the 3 realms, right? So we have the Bishop realm, which is also known as the Light realm, you'll see. Then we have the Void or Abyssal realm, and then we have the Human realm, which is important later on. So think of those, that we have the 3 ones, which is actually interesting because if you played the game way back when Enkanomiya first came out, you have the 3 Realms Gateway offering, and it kind of made this connection in my brain, and I'm like, oh, it's called the 3 Realms because of the 3 Realms. There's more. It makes sense because of the 3 realms of the Bishop, because Enkanomiya resides in the Bishop realm, technically. So the Bishop, the Abyssal, Void realm, and then the Human realm. So 3 Realms Gateway offering is because of the realms. And then there's also other things about the realms in Enkanomiya. Yeah. So that is a little bit shorter, but that's the time 40 years after the Held Branches. Hey! Oh my gosh, Ready Game! Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! You get a sub, and you get a sub. Renegade, thank you so much for the gifted sub. I really appreciate it, and I know that Adrian Silver will also appreciate it as well. So, thank you, thank you, thank you. We are 1 away from our goal. Man, this would be crazy if we get another one. Oh my gosh, I was not expecting this. So, thank you so much. You guys, my lip is bleeding so bad right now. Do you see this? I don't have a napkin. Don't die. I have a cotton pad. I split my lip this morning, and it's, bleeding so bad right now. I have a little cotton pad. Here we go. Don't mind me as I die. Go fix myself. We have things to do. I can't afford to fix myself right now. Sorry as I bleed. This will deserve an update on Twitter. Yeah, it will. Sorry, you guys. Is it really bad? Look at me looking at my camera. I probably need to go put Vaseline on. Okay. It'll probably keep bleeding, but I'm not that worried about it. Technical difficulties, but with my body, okay? Technical body difficulties. We'll get COVID for that. Don't even joke. Don't even joke. Okay. She's that passionate about the Lord. Yeah, blood, sweat, and tears, chat. Blood, sweat, and tears. Cheers. I mean, cheers too, but tears. Okay. That's it. We're gonna go to the next slide. Because we gotta get through the old world here. Okay, they win. That's the whole point of the story. Took 40 years to win, but they win. That is the end of the old world. So that indicates the end of the era, and moving into the new world era was the winning of that battle, the scattering of the sovereign and their followers. That is the old world ended. Okay, so next we're gonna go into the new world. And for those of you who are newer to, which I know you have a little bit of a disadvantage, so sorry, but I was saying I have matchas hidden all over these slides, and if you can count and or guess the correct number of matchas on the slides, you'll be... This is unfair. You'll get a VIP status. I'm bribing people with VIP statuses. Guess the amount. Okay, so let's go into the new world. Things get a little bit more intense here, but really not until the Era of Darkness does it start popping off. So, here's what we're going to cover. We're going to talk about the Ark's opening, or the time 400 years after the Held Branches, so 400 years after the Primordial One arrives. Then we're going to talk about the Salvandagnair civilization, the Divine Envoys, and the Seelies and the Moon Sisters, right? And here's some pretty pictures. So here's the new world. So what ends up happening? So 40 years is from when the Primordial One arrives, he wins the war, and then 400 years from when he arrives, he spent that time to prepare the world for the arrival of humanity. Now, it is not necessarily known whether or not the Primordial One created humanity or humanity arrived from somewhere else, because recent, well, not that recent, but information that I was reading from a book in Inazuma indicates that humanity actually arrived from, they were like, they're all travelers. Humanity arrived from over the seas, is what one source says. But it just kind of says in the information about the Primordial One is that he just prepared the world for humanity, and then humanity was there. So we don't really know if he created humanity or humanity also already existed in other worlds, and then they just prepared the way, terraformed the world so humanity could live there. We're not entirely sure, but it just kind of was, right? So the Primordial One finishes the preparing the world with the four shining shades, right? The shining shades kind of take apart. We know that Istarath was time, so that was kind of Istarath's domain, was managing time. And then the other shades, if you think about it, if they are related to the artifacts, then you're going to have life, death, logic, and so on. We do know that one of the shades was responsible for life, because it specifically says that one of the shades, I forget which text it was, but Fanes, or the Primordial One, and one of its shades created all animal life together, and that shade was the one representing life. So that's something that's important to note, kind of furthering the speculation that maybe they are related to the artifact sets. So Primordial One finishes creating the world. The Primordial One and one of its shades create all animal life form onto that. And humanity is there. Humanity comes, humanity is created, whatever it is. So in this time, known as like the Ark's opening, humanity creates a covenant with the Primordial One, and then the Primordial One creates a sacred plan for humanity. That is specifically mentioned, but we don't actually know what that sacred plan was, right? Could be related to the heavenly principles. So that is the year of the Ark's opening, the initial thing, right? So the year after the Ark's opening, it says, in before sun and moon, the people worked the land, and so came the first harvest. The people mined, and so reaped the first crop of precious ore. The people gathered, and the first poems were written. And that's from the Before Sun and Moon, Volume 2. And then so that's kind of just the year after the Ark's opening. And then this leads into the time, or the year of Jubilee, which is kind of why I put happy Mondstadt pictures, because I was like, happy year of Jubilee and harvest and all that. So I didn't actually have pictures of, obviously, all the way back then, but that's why we have fun Mondstadt happy Jubilee looking pictures. I know, I just want everybody to know that this is the year of Jubilee. It is not the years of Jubilee. It is the year of Jubilee, very specifically. The year of Jubilee, right? And it says, if there was hunger, the heavens would bring down food and rain. If there was poverty, the earth would bring forth its riches. If melancholy were to spread, the heavens would reply with their voices. The one taboo was to succumb to temptation, but the path to temptation had already been sealed, right? That's also from Before Sun and Moon, Volume 2. Like I said, Before Sun and Moon, the book from Enkanomiya, kind of chronicles all of the beginning of time. So, not in great detail, but kind of bigger picture. So that is the year of Jubilee. So around this time, so this is our first, excuse me, I forgot to switch. Let me switch over. Oops. Well, there's a beautiful picture. I didn't mean to do that, but here we are. So we're going to go to the Salvandagnir civilization. So this is our first information. Okay, this was my first point in the lore with some inconsistency where I was like, my brain hurts, I don't know. So here's what we have. We have sources that say two things. We have one source, and I thought I wrote it down, but I didn't, so I'd have to refind it. But we have one source that states that during a time of great strife in a land of snow, a group of people seeking shelter found a prosperous land and created the Salvandagnir civilization, right? That's one source says that. Fresh oysters for lunch for my Chesapeake Bay bestie. Have. Oh my gosh, that sounds so good. I want fresh oysters. Well, have so much fun with that, and thanks for being here, but excited to see you back. Okay, so that's one source. One source says that it started during a land of snow and great strife, right? So this would indicate, because the only other time that we see, I mean, other than besides the 7 sovereigns, tell all your friends hi. Thanks, Fighter Felix. Yeah, tell everybody. So during the time of the 7 sovereigns, that could technically be a time of snow and strife, but it doesn't really match up. But that is another speculation that it could have been during the era of the 7 sovereign, but then it's like, but we didn't think humanity existed. Humanity didn't come until after. So it kind of doesn't line up because the land of snow and strife, so it's either the 7 sovereigns or the start of the civilization would have been Decarabian's Mondstadt, because the only other time we see the specific terminology, snow and strife, a land of snow and strife, would be coming from Decarabian's Mondstadt, which is, we don't talk about that till 2 eras from now. But what's crazy about that is like, well, what's the big deal? Because what is the destruction of Salvandagnir, which we'll talk about in more detail later, is when the divine nails fall, right? So that makes no sense to you guys now. But that happens 1 era from now. So not this era that we're in now, 1 era from now. So how could the start of the civilization be 2 eras from now, but the end of it be 1 era from now? Does that make sense? I was like, hold up. I was like, this makes no sense. And so this was like my first kind of like inconsistency in the lore that I found that really made my brain hurt, because I was like, I have one source that says it started 2 eras from now, one source that says it starts, or it ends 1 era from now, and then like other speculation that it could have started during the time of the 7 sovereign, but we've had no proof of humanity. So I'm like, did humans exist before? No, that doesn't make sense, because it says humanity didn't come until the primordial one, 400 years after the held branches, when the primordial one finished preparing Teyvat for humanity, right? See what I'm saying, where my brain hurt? I was like, what do you mean? I literally sat here, I think, for an hour, just like, what do you mean? I'm so lost. So here's what I decided to do. We do know for sure, like, the big kind of event marker is the fall of Salvandagnir, right? That's like the big marker. So I decided I'm just going to stick with that, which means that it ends 1 era from now, and we're just going to work our way backwards. So this is kind of just a rough estimate. I'm not entirely sure when it would have started, because it's a bit confusing, right? So, because also in this time of the New World, we're not supposed to have any strife, right? It's supposed to be like Jubilee, and the heavens are answering. And actually at this time, as we talk about in the next section, humanity communicated with Celestia and all that. So it wouldn't entirely make sense for Salvandagnir to start during this era, but it just didn't make, I didn't know where to put it. So let me just say, take this with a grain of salt. I don't know. This was a little bit of a guess as to where to put it. But just based on when Salvandagnir falls, the ending of the civilization being an era from now, I'm like, and it talks about how it was like a prosperous nation, and it was, you know, a vast civilization, and I'm like, well, it couldn't have happened in like 10 years, like it had to be way longer. So yes, so there's my preface to this. This was my first big brain ache where I was like, I don't know. Salvandagnir, let me tell you a little bit about it, right? Did it start during Decarabian's Mondstadt? We don't know. Did it start during the reign of 7 Sovereign? We don't know. What we do know, it fell when the Divine Nails fell, which we'll talk more about later in the next section. So we do also know that they were home to one of the trees of Irminsul, which I think is the same tree of Irminsul. It's just like another branch, like, you know, the root system spreads throughout Teyvat, and it was one of the trees. So there were 4 trees of Irminsul, which, if you don't know, Irminsul is the tree from Sumeru, and it is I don't know what you want to call it. What's the fast way to say it? The tree of time? Something like that. It has recorded all history of Teyvat. So within Irminsul, it's like the entire timeline, the entire history, all of that of Teyvat in Irminsul. So it's like this very important tree that can't die, right? Because if like Irminsul died, then like that would destroy the world, essentially. But it has these massive roots that go out all through Teyvat, because it's this massive tree. like massive, and all these routes that go out throughout Teyvat. And it had, back in the New World, Irminsul had 4 total trees. So the one we know of that exists in Sumeru, we don't know the other 2 locations, but we do know, I didn't show all of the paintings, the wall paintings, but we do know in this wall painting, this depicts the civilization of Salvandagnir. So you had these priest kings who communicated directly with the primordial one here. We do know that Dragonspine in Mondstadt was the kind of the city center of Salvandagnir. This is the domain, the Vindagnir domain, the inside of it. But we do know that at one point Celestia actually, because of this wall painting, at one point Celestia actually existed above Salvandagnir, above the peak of Dragonspine. Like, in the sense of, like, I don't know if it, like, rested on top of it, but it floated above it. Like, it hovered above it, and they were able to contact and go to Celestia. You know, kind of like the Jade Palace. Think of the Jade Palace in Liyue. Like, you know, you can take a lift up there, and it was just there. So they had that direct access to Celestia. So we know at that one point that this is what happened. So, but yeah, Dragonspine, this is Dragonspine now, but it used to be like a once very green, verdant land. So that's Salvandagnir. Home to one of the trees of Irminsul. At some point, Celestia floated above it. And what else? And the last thing we do know about that is there was the one that was information piece that was mentioned was the Princess of Salvandagnir. She plays an important role during the fall of Salvandagnir. But we do know that she was born under the tree of Irminsul and that she could foresee the future. And she was actually the one who painted these frescoes. Because these were actually predictions of the future that she painted. So, and they all came true, by the way. We'll find that out later. But they all come true. So that's the other little thing to know, is the Princess of Salvandagnir played an important role in the fall. Not causing it, but just in the midst of it. She was born under the tree of Irminsul, and she could foresee the future. She did so by painting frescoes, right? These wall paintings. So that's Salvandagnir. I will say there are other civilizations going on at this point. And even, it's not like my lore is not all extensive because it would take us years. Not actually years, but it would take us a long time to go through like every village, every civilization. But I'll just say that I'm talking about some of the civilizations that we have the most information about and that actually played big parts in the story, whether it was like an Archon quest it was mentioned or one of the big world quests. And Salvandagnir is one of those, where we discover this in one of the world quests. I forget exactly which one it was, but like one of the world quests talks a lot about Salvandagnir, and we see all these frescoes, and it's a whole big thing. So I kind of just chose some of the bigger civilizations, but there are other civilizations going on at this point, just so you know. Okay, so that is Salvandagnir. The next thing that we're going to talk about is the Divine Envoys. So the Divine Envoys were not the Adepti, as shown here, but they functioned a similar role, so I just put pictures of the Adepti because we don't have any pictures of the Divine Envoy. And I needed an excuse to put Ganyu in my slides. This was my excuse to put Ganyu, okay? So here's the Divine Envoys. They were known as the messengers of Celestia. So when I said that humanity could communicate with Celestia, it was through these divine envoys. We don't really know who they are, but we do know that they were tasked with guiding humanity and guiding the people. We're going to talk about the Seelie civilization next, but there's kind of some overlap between the divine envoys role and the Seelies role, and some people have speculated in the community that the Seelies could have been the divine envoys, but I've made them 2 separate slides because there is also information that would show that they were possibly 2 different. Like, we don't know what the divine envoys were, but that they could have been separate races, separate beings, I don't know, however you want to call it. So, in the time of the New World, humanity communicated with Celestia very openly, and it was through these divine envoys. And like I said, they were sent to guide humanity. So, there has been some information that has also been a little bit muddled of when the divine envoys existed. But there's a couple things. So there's one from the Flower of Paradise Lost, which is an artifact piece. The Amethyst Crown. The Flower of Paradise Lost is the artifact set. Sorry, the crown is what we're looking at. So the circlet of Logos. So, it was a faraway time of calm and peace. Divine envoys spoke openly with the people then, bringing them the word from the heavens. We'll stop there. So that's one instance that would show possibly where the divine envoys existed. I actually will say the next part because this is what gives us that time, like that timeline. But in time, invaders descended from beyond the firmament, bringing them with them destruction, overturning rivers, spreading plagues, etc., etc. Which we'll talk about those invaders later. So then that gives us a little bit of a time frame of when the divine envoys existed, which would have had to be during the New World, which would have had to be during, like, you know, the Year of Jubilee, when humanity was at peace with the Primordial One and the Four Shining Shades, and they could openly communicate with Celestia, so on and so forth. And then it also says, actually, this is some Fontaine stuff that I found out, and I was like, oh my gosh. So the history and the decline of the fall of Remuria, which is the Ancient Fontaine Civilization, Volume 1, says, legend has it that in the first era, which would be which I know we talked about the Old World era, but technically it's, you know, when Primordial One won, that's like the start of the first era. The earliest peoples were self-supporting in their virtue, needing no laws or authorities. The envoys of the heavenly city walked the earth, and with their guidance, the people enjoyed enduring peace, prosperity, and abundance from the ancient days. So that would go to show both of those would indicate that the divine envoys would have existed during the time of peace and prosperity, where there were no laws or authorities, which would have been the New World era, when everything was at peace, the world was created, humanity came, Primordial One walked among them, the Four Shining Shades walked among them, there were no heavenly principles, so on and so forth. They didn't need any laws at that point. So that's kind of the evidence for why I put the divine envoys in this era, because I do believe they existed based on those two pieces of evidence. I believe that they existed in this era. So let me get some water. Hold on. But yes, recap. Messengers of Celestia. And they were sent to guide humanity. So that is the divine envoys. The next thing we're going to talk about is the Seelies and the Moon Sisters. So here's some fun information. The Seelies and the Moon Sisters. So who are the Seelies? We actually see them now in game. We do see Seelies, right? And we're going to see, you know, the most famous Seelie, which is the original Animo Seelie, is this creature right here in this left picture, right? Then you do run into the Inazuma Seelies, which are these purple kind of electrified Seelies. But we'll talk about that. I'd say this a lot. We'll talk about this more later. It's because the Era of Darkness, everything happens in the Era of Darkness, and it all make more sense. It all kind of come together, but I gotta set the scene, right? So that's what we see the Seelies as now, but they were not that once. Once upon a time, they were known to be very beautiful, elegant, and wise beings who, quite possibly, existed, like, were very ancient, an ancient civilization that existed outside of the world of Teyvat that then came to Teyvat, sent as guides to humanity, right? So we don't actually know how old the Moon Sisters and the Seelie are, but we do know, like, there is texts that say, there was a text, I was trying to find it, but I know it uses Rex Lapis as, or Morax, or Zhongli, the god of Geo, or god of contracts, whatever. I guess I didn't write it down, but I know it does talk about how, when Rex Lapis was young, they died, and so that would make it, at least 6,000 years ago, and then it even says that they existed well before that. So we don't know exactly when the Moon Sisters came to be, when the Seelie civilization came to be, but best speculation is that it came to be, at least the Seelie was alive and thriving, the civilization, outside of the world of Teyvat before, you know, a long, 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 long time ago. We'll leave it at that. So what they did is they actually, existed even when they came down to the world of Teyvat. They existed outside of the gods' control in a place known as the Dark Sea. So it actually says, so here's an excerpt from a book from Mondstadt called A Drunkard's Tale, Volume 3. It says, this wasteland is said to be a land beyond the dominion of the deities, inhabited only by the grotesque ghostly remains of fallen gods, where the former palaces of the Seelie now stand empty. So that was our indication that and that's also referenced as being the Dark Sea in that area where all the fallen gods are. But it's where the former palaces of the Seelie now stand empty. So it goes to show that the Seelie actually existed outside of the gods' control, outside of Celestia's control, in what is now known as the Dark Sea. I don't know if it's always called that. And that is where they had their palaces. That's where they are from. That's where they existed. And like I said, they were sent to guide humanity, which is why it's also kind of like, well, were the Seelies the divine envoys? Because they had the same purpose. The Seelies were sent to guide humanity. But if they also existed outside of Celestia's control, you think that why would they be the messengers of Celestia? I don't know. It's stuff to think about. Brain food, right? Let's see. Okay, so that's enough for the Seelies right now. So that's the Seelie civilization. Known to be, like, we don't actually have any pictures of any Seelie, what they used to look like. But it is said in various texts that they were known to be, like, gorgeous, beautiful, very elegant, very kind-hearted, very wise individuals. The whole race was like that. Okay, so next we're going to talk about the Moon Sisters, right? So the Moon Sisters, kind of the same situation as the Seelie, some of the oldest known living beings at that point in the new era, who existed as the moon. So there's these 3 moons, or the 3 Moon Sisters, that would take turns exchanging sovereignty. Basically, like a new moon would come 3 times a month, right? Let me give you, it's easier if I just kind of read this. So from a book called The Moonlit Bamboo Forest, Volume 3 from Liyue, it says, long ago, 3 bright moons once hung high in the night sky. These 3 moons were sisters, their years numbering more than that of the Geo-Archon, and their year of birth dating before the very bedrock upon which Liyue Harbor now rests. Okay, that was the little thing that I was looking for. The moons were daughters of prose and song, sovereign over the night sky. They navigated the heavens above in their silver carriage, alternating with one another thrice a month. Need some water. Okay, with another thrice a month. If the rain was not promptly passed from one sister to the next, a terrible disaster would occur that very day. Foreshadowing. These 3 luminous moons shared but one love. The stars of daybreak. I want you to remember that. They shared one love. The stars of daybreak. Only at the fleeting moments when day and night converged could one of the 3 sisters pass the fading stars and gaze upon the chambers of the morning stars. Moments later, as the new dawn would break over the horizon, the carriage would quickly ferry the night's sister away. 3 sisters shared an equal affection for their one and only love, much like the affection they shared for one another. So that is the Moon Sisters, and that kind of gives you enough information about who they are. So things I want you to remember. Think about how they're in love with the stars of daybreak. Remember that there's 3 sisters, there are 3 moons, and if they don't change their sovereignty promptly, a bad calamity will happen. And then, there's one more thing that I wanted you to remember. And think about the lunar carriage or the silver carriage. Same thing, but you'll hear it referenced both ways. So the silver carriage or the lunar carriage. All important things. Okay. I need some more sustenance. Oh yes, and I forgot to say, the names of the Moon Sisters, we did actually get them, are Aria, Sonnet, and Canon. As it says, the moons were daughter of prose and song, so it makes sense that their names are Aria, Sonnet, and Canon. And they also dwell in the Lunar Palace. We don't know where that is exactly. I assumed it was in the sky because it's the Lunar Palace and their moons and all that. But just remember that too. They dwelt in the Lunar Palace, or the Lunar Hall is something you'll also hear it called. and they switch sovereignty over the night sky at regular intervals. That is the ending of the New World. How are we feeling, chat? I'm gonna take a quick break and eat an apricot here, because my throat's already getting scratchy. But how are we feeling, chat? What do we think? Been good? Too much information? Sorry, I'm just gonna eat some apricots. So that's the old world and the new world taken care of. I'm giving you a little break before the era of darkness because, y'all, it gets intense here. Drink water, everybody. Soak in this break. I need it too for my throat. It's been good so far, though. There's been so much information that I couldn't include it all, and that was hard, you know? Do I have a favorite period of time in the lore? I'm gonna preface that that's a great question. Or, like, put it in the context of, like, I have not researched every time in the lore yet. So I guess I could also say, like, if I don't count current Genshin era, which is, like, obviously where the game is, so I feel like I'm gonna like that the most because I'm interacting with that era, and, like, I'm living the history, you know what I mean? Like, I'll be in the history books in that era, like, I'll be, meaning the traveler. So if I don't count that era, maybe pre-Archon War era is pretty nice. Because I don't want to spoil things for my thing, but things kind of settled down a little bit more in the pre-Archon War era after the era of darkness. And some of my favorite characters in the game are born during that era or exist during that era. Like Ganyu is one of them. Guizhong, Zhongli, the Adepti. So you're gonna have Zhao. You're gonna have Cloud Retainer, Mountain Carver. So a lot of them exist in this era. Madame Ping is another one. So a lot of them exist in this era. And there's kind of some fun civilizations that sprout up. Greater Lord Rukkhadevata, the Goddess of Flowers. So I would say as of now, because I haven't researched, like, I know what happens during the Archon War, which is the next era, but I don't have a lot of information on, like, what happens between the Archon War era and then eventually what's known as the Cataclysm. So yeah, my answer right now is going to be the pre-Archon War era. I like it. Okay. I'm gonna eat this and then I'm gonna restart. I just can feel my throat getting scratchy, so I gotta drink some water and some coffee. Okay. I'm gonna be hoarse by the end of this. The problem is sometimes when I get excited, this is so random, I know everybody, but I will talk in, like, a higher register than I normally talk in, and then it, like, makes my throat hoarse. Does that anybody else do that? I don't know. When I get excited, I, like, talk in a higher octave, and then I'm like, ugh. So I gotta talk lower? I don't know. Maybe I talk in a lower octave. Let me think about that. I think I talk lower. Anyway, let's continue. This is the time, everybody, where you need to prepare your emotional damages. Okay? Everybody put your cursor on the emotional damage button, okay? I'm giving you a minute. Put your finger on the emotional damage button. Because it's about to be We're all sad up in here. Okay? I'm letting you prepare. Take a minute. Put your cursor on the emotional damage. Get ready to spend your mini matchas.
Emotional damage!
Great job at demonstrating to the class, Kindiana. Great job. Here we go! The era of darkness. This is when everything falls apart. You ready? Let's get it. The era of darkness is also known as the funerary year. There is a lot that happens, and this is going to be the brunt of our conversation, is in this era. This will probably take an hour. Here are all the topics we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the arrival of the second throne of the heavens. We're going to talk about how Morax is born, because that's an important timeline marker. We're going to talk about the fall of the Seelie civilization and the death of the Moon Sisters, the fall of Enkanomiya, the fall of the Solar Chariot, the Star of Daybreak, the Nabu. I actually spelled that wrong. It's Malikata, but I put Makalata. I'll fix that later. Malikata. It's an L. Switch the K and the L. Malikata and the Jinn. We'll just call her Nabu. And the beginning of Conria. And then lastly, the Divine Nails. So a lot is going on here. And we don't have any pictures of a lot of these things, so I just did some images of destroyed places in the chasm, because I figured that's some good stuff. And there's some references to the chasm in this area. Okay, so first, we're going to talk about the arrival of the second who came, also known as the second throne of the heavens. Who was the first throne of the heavens? It was the primordial one, right? So this is also the second descender. So there's something that we kind of talk about and have learned about in Sumeru is the descenders, right? So the first descender is the primordial one. The second descender is the second who came, or the second throne of heavens, right? We don't know who the other identities are. I believe the Traveler is the sixth descender. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was the sixth, maybe the seventh. But the Traveler in current Genshin time is the sixth descender. We found that out in Sumeru's Archon quest. So we're the sixth descender. Or the seventh. I'm pretty sure it's the sixth. I have to look that up. But someone correct me if they know the answer. But I'm pretty sure we're the sixth descender. So that's important to remember. So this is the second descender. The second throne of the heavens. Or the second who came. All out war. So the second who came comes down for some unknown reason. We literally have no idea why. Second who came comes down, immediately starts just an all-out brawl with the primordial one and the four shining shades. We don't know why. So it says in Before Sun and Moon, that book from Enkanomiya, it says, the second throne of the heavens came and war was rekindled, as it was in the world's creation. That day, the heavens collapsed and the earth was rent asunder. Our ancestors and their ancestral land fell into this place during that conflict. So, that is note of the second throne of the heavens, or the second who came down. We don't have a name. We don't even know who it would be. I know I picked this image just because it's intense. This is not the second who came, just for reference, but this is the sustainer of heavenly principles, or the unknown god, and I figured since it was set in Celestia, and then on top of that, it's related to the heavens, it's a good image, because we don't have any images of the second who came, any wall paintings, any frescoes. We just know the second who came arrived, descended for unknown reasons, and just started war. It was like, I don't like the primordial one, I got beef, we're gonna figure it out. So the world went into disarray, just absolute chaos, right? Immediately, just terrible things started happening, and we're gonna talk about that. So on the next slide, we're gonna be talking about Morax is born. So right before we dive into all the travesty, Morax is born, we know, at some point during this timeline. We don't have the exact, yes, fun fact. I'm excited for this fun fact. I'm gonna get some water. I will talk while your fun fact populates. Oh, the second is referred to as oh, do you know what? I actually saw that. But like, hold up, let's just go back real quick. For those of you who are familiar with the MiHoYo / Hoyoverse, depending on, you know, time, which is the company that creates Genshin Impact, they also have Honkai Star Rail, if you're familiar. And they also have their first, not their first game, but their first kind of in this series, which I believe is all connected, would be Honkai Impact 3rd, right? So Honkai Impact, well, that's not true. Isn't there like a anyway, we'll just talk about 3rd, because that's the most prominent one. So in Honkai Impact 3rd, the main character is named Kiana. And I can't go into the Honkai Impact 3rd lore. I really think it's all connected. We can talk about my wild theories later, because I got a ton of them. But I do believe all the worlds are connected. So Kiana is the main character in Honkai Impact 3rd, right? I'm not going to talk about the whole story, but essentially she becomes... So they have these things called Hershers, which are kind of like the gods. It's just the rough way we'll put it. They're like the gods of Honkai Impact 3rd, the Archons, right? Or the Aeons, because that's what they call them in Honkai Impact 3rd. So the Hersher, what does she become? The Hersher of the Void? I don't know. She becomes a god, and essentially, I'm just telling you, if you look up Kiana's model... She technically becomes a couple different Hershers, whatever. But if you look up her model, I am telling you, I should have included it, but like, if you compare it to this model here, like if you compare it to that model, it is like practically the same person. I'm just saying, I'm so convinced that Kiana is the sustainer of heavenly principles. But that's a wild theory. I have no definitive evidence. I can't tell you anything. I'm just saying that's a sidetracked. And then the fact that I saw that same leak, Keenedge, that the file for the Sustainer of Heavenly Principles is titled Kiana. I'm just saying, and not like this is super related, but did you know Kiana is like the queen of the moon and some whatever? Which talk about like the heavens and everything, and then all the stuff with the moon sisters. It's kind of like, I don't know. But it's just saying, anyway, that's such a tangent. Let me go back on track, because I can talk about my wild theories all day about Genshin. But I do think that this is actually Kiana Castellana, as the sustainer of heavenly principles. Because I'm just telling you, look up her model right now, Kiana Hersher, Honkai Impact 3rd, and compare it to that one. You have to find the right one, because she has a couple different versions. But like her final, I think it's her final form. Looks like that. Just telling you, it looks like that. Anyway, let me back. Okay, let's go back. So before we dive into all the sadness, Morax is born. This is important, and I include it because, as I said, this is our first timeline marker where we can actually start doing some years. So we know Morax was born approximately 6,000 years ago. So we know that the second who came was approximately 6,000 years ago. Obviously, give or take maybe 10 or 20 years. But in a span of 6,000 years, that's not that much. So this is how we know. I put him here because it's like, well, how do you know when Morax was born? So this is one of the things. There's a couple ones. So it says, it is said that Rex Lapis was still young. The sun was a chariot that raced across the earth. When the three sisters of the night sky were martyred in a calamity, the solar chariot fell into a deep gorge. And that's from the artifact Vermilion Hereafter, the solar relic. So we know that he was young when the solar chariot fell and when the moon sisters died, which we will cover next. And then, so because of that, we have indications for when the moon sisters died and indications of when the solar chariot fell, right? And so it's kind of all connected. So then this is why I was like, I'm going to put Morax as being in the era of darkness towards the beginning of the era of darkness. I believe he was born, or at least he was young at that point. Now, there's a lot of points in the era of darkness, like a lot of subtopics, as you saw, but keep in mind, like I said, we believe this happened in pretty quick succession. Now, I'm not saying maybe it happened all in the same year or something like that, but I really don't think it was like a 400-year time span. The way it's talked about, it probably happened in the span of 5 to 10 years that all of this goes down that we're about to talk about. So here's our first marker. Morax, Rex Lapis, Zhongli was born approximately 6,000 years ago. So we know that the second who came, it happened approximately 6,000 years ago. I would say give or take 100 years. I know I said like 10 or 20, but give or take 100 years, because we don't really know how young was Rex Lapis? We don't know if he was 100 years old, because that would probably be considered so young in the time span of 7,000 years, however long he's going to live for. But we do know it would have happened around this time frame. So that's Rex Lapis. Let's go to the next. Oh, actually, I didn't need to say something. The Lunar Palace. So this is a little bit of speculation. I don't speak the language, but we're talking about the Chinese version of the game. Sorry, I was like, what am I thinking? I had 7 thoughts at once. So this is a theory, but I just thought I'd mention it because it was interesting, right? So Morax, it's most likely that Morax was not born on Teyvat. He was born outside of Teyvat, whatever that means. He was born in the heavens, whatever that means, right? Because there are various texts, I won't go through all of them, but there are texts that could indicate that he was born outside of Teyvat. He was not like born in the land, right? Among the humans. But he actually possibly descended. So it says there are theories floating around that Morax may have belonged to the Moon Palace or the Lunar Palace, and had been demoted to Teyvat. So this is a little bit, this is maybe a little bit far-fetched, but I thought it was interesting. So there's information from the Boatman quest on Surumi Island that in the Chinese version, there's a stone tablet compilations, and it says, in the beginning, Rex Lapis was demoted, and it uses a specific characters for this term of demotion that is reserved for sons of the emperor who didn't make crown prince being sent to their fiefdoms, or a government official getting demoted and had to physically move to their new worse job. So, English translated it as he descended from the Lunar Palace. But the Chinese version uses the characters for demotion in the specific kind. So that's something just to think about and just interesting. But English translation does say that Rex Lapis descended. And some people are thinking it could have been from the Lunar Palace. So that's something just to think about. That it is possible that Rex Lapis could have been a descender. Possibly the 3rd descender. Possibly, well, it'd have to be the 3rd. But possibly not. It could just but because we know that for sure the second who came is the 2nd descender. But yes. That's my information. That's my little tidbit. That one's a little bit more far-fetched, but I just thought that was pretty interesting, so I thought I'd include it. So that's Morax. Next, we're going to talk about the fall of the Sealy civilization. This is where things start getting really sad, everybody. I didn't know the Descender possibility either until I started researching for this stream, because I had not done the Boatman quest in Surumi Island. And so when it said, oh, according to the Boatman quest, I was like, what the heck is the Boatman quest? I still haven't done it, but I looked up what it was so I could see the text that's talked about. And it talks about how Rex Lapis descended from the heavens. Or was possibly cast out. We're not sure. Depending on different translations. So yes. The fall of the Sealy civilization. This is where it gets sad, everybody. Get ready. Here we have the fall of the Sealies. So they were a great civilization, obviously, just to recap, sent to guide humanity. Possibly could have been the divine envoys. We don't know. They existed outside of Celestia, but we don't know how it originated or how it happened. But the thing about the Sealies is that they were cursed. They were cursed that if they were to ever fall in love with a human, they would lose their intelligence and strength in their forms. So what ended up happening? A Sealy fell in love with a traveler. We don't know what Sealy, we don't know what traveler. So what happens is we know that a Sealy ancestor fell in love with a traveler from afar, and they got married in the Lunar Palace. I know, forbidden love, no, it's the worst. They got married in the Lunar Palace with the 3 Moon Sisters as a witnesses, to their union. Right? So that was in the Lunar Palace. It's all very important. But they were cursed. So they decided, regardless, they didn't think the curse was going to happen. They fell in love. They had a union. Who cursed the Sealy? That's a great question. I couldn't figure that out. We don't know. Could have been the heavens. Could have been Celestia. one thing that I thought, I have no evidence, just something that I was kind of thinking about, is maybe it was along the lines of like, since the Seelie existed outside of Celestia's control, maybe the heavens didn't like that. But Primal One didn't like that, and so he cursed them that if they were ever to fall in love with humans, they'd lose their intelligence. I don't know. That's just a far-fetched idea that I was kind of pondering. We don't actually know, unless someone knows the resource, but in my research, I could not figure out who cursed the Seelie. It just was like, they were cursed. That was the resource. It was like, they were cursed to lose their intelligence and strength if they fell in love with human. So that happens. They have the Union, the Lunar Palace, the Three Moon Sisters as witnesses, right? So what happens? 30 days after the Union, calamity. It says the Great Calamity happened. A disaster struck. And this caused the Seelie and their lover to flee into exile as the world collapsed around them. So they ran away to try and escape from their curse. All it says, it doesn't have like an exact timeline for how long they were running or everything, but it just says eventually the calamity caught up with them, and their cruel punishment was to be separated for eternity and to have their memories wiped. And from what we can see, the union between the Seelie and the Traveler was actually something that was like the Seelie civilization was excited about. And so because of the curse, not only did it just affect that one Seelie and the Traveler, but it affected the entire Seelie civilization because they were heartbroken because of what happened to the Union. And so they lost their intelligence and strength, but because of the fact that they were heartbroken, their wondrous forms withered away, leaving fragments of their former selves. Which is now what we see today, the Seelies. These are two other forms that you find, one from Sumeru and one from Dragonspine, and then the Seelie courts, obviously, that they reside in. So that's what happened to the Seelie. So 30 days after the Union, a great calamity struck, and they were cursed to live apart, but eventually they were so heartbroken that they lost their intelligence and strength due to the curse, but then they also ended up losing their forms, because of how heartbroken they were. Left with only fragments of their former selves. So that's the Seelie as we see them today. That's what we see in the game. And the goal in the game is to guide the the Seelies to their Seelie courts, which is like their homes. And we don't actually know what they looked like, but that's just the remnants of what they are now. So that's the first sad thing, right? We'll talk about this a little bit later, but it is thought, and this is why I did this in the timeline, we'll talk about it when we get to the fall of Enkanomiya, but it is thought that the Seelie civilization fell around the same time as Enkanomiya, because if you go into Enkanomiya, around the same time, but before, I should say, or before, because the Seelie courts existed, which means their forms would have had to wither, but on top of that, the Seelie courts, which are this, like, when I say that, it's like this little tiny statue here. The Seelie courts are in pristine condition in Enkanomiya. They don't have the wear and tear of the ones in the overworld of Teyvat. So it's thought that it fell before, the Seelies fell before Enkanomiya falls. Literally. Enkanomiya literally falls. So before Enkanomiya falls, the Seelies fall, their courts, they wither away, blah, 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 blah. I don't know how long it takes for them to wither away into their now forms with the Seelie courts, but that's why it's thought that the fall of Enkanomiya is after the fall of the Seelie, because the Seelie courts are in pristine condition in Enkanomiya. So, okay, so there were possibly some survivors of the Seelies, which we will talk about. We know two possible survivors of the Seelie race. No longer alive, but they did live for a while after. For some reason, they were able to keep their forms and their intelligence and wisdom and strength. So that's something to note we'll talk about later. Remember that. Two Seelies that we that we know about that lived through the calamity. Okay, so now we'll talk about the fall of the Moon Sisters in this portion down here. So as the calamity struck, this happened from what I understand pretty simultaneous. So as the calamity struck, as the union happened, 30 days later, the calamity hits. The Seelie and their traveler have to run and are cursed to be exiled and apart forever and lose their memories. So at the same time with that calamity, the Moon Sisters, their carriage is ransacked and overturned, and the lunar palace is destroyed. So it just says as calamity struck, the lunar carriage was overturned, right? So why I tell you foreshadowing earlier, what happens, what carries them, yeah, cursed by their whack rules, you're right about that. What did we say? What happens if the Moon Sisters don't change their sovereignty every 3 times a month on schedule? Disaster. That's literally what it said. A disaster would occur, right? So with their lunar carriage overturned, the carriage, as it said in the previous excerpt from the book, the carriage or the silver carriage or the lunar carriage is what took them, it would drop the one moon off and it would pick the other one up, and then that was the rotation. So because the lunar carriage was overturned, they were unable to switch sovereignty according to when they needed to. So disaster occurs, right? The lunar palace is destroyed, and what ends up happening is the sisters war with each other, right? So the sisters end up warring with each other, and the really sad thing is they actually end up killing each other. So all of the sisters end up having, they turn against each other, they battle each other for some reason. We don't know exactly why they turn against each other in this situation. Could have to do with the lunar carriage overturning, so they end up warring with each other, they all die. And so actually the current, I'm trying to hydrate, I know, thank you for the reminder. I keep trying to, but I get so excited I forget. Drink water, everybody! Okay, so what is it? So they war with each other, they die. This is where it gets so sad. The current Tevat moon that we see in-game is actually the carcass of one of the sisters. We don't actually know which one it is, whether it was Ariasana or canon, but it is stated. So look, it says, with time, this is from Moonlit Bamboo Forest from Liyue, Volume 3. With time, disasters overturned the sovereign carriage and laid ruin to the Hall of the Stars, the Lunar Palace. The 3 sisters of the night turned against one another, leading to their eternal parting by death. Only one of their pale corpses now remains, ever shedding its cold light. Emotional damage, anybody? How sad is that? So these 3 sisters that had this great love for each other, it talks about how their love was equal for each other as it was to the stars of daybreak. Killed each other. They warred with each other. Isn't that terrible? So, but that's what happens. So, disaster strikes because of the union with the Seelie, and because they were there, the Moon Sisters were there as witness to this curse, to this forbidden act. This is the result. The Seelies fall, they wither away, they lose their forms, and the Moon Sisters die, with what's left is the corpse of one of the Moon Sisters just floating in the sky for all eternity, right? We don't know what happened to the other 2. Whether they fell to this ground or whatever it was. Excuse me. So that is the fall of the Seelies, the fall of the Moon Sisters. Next, we're going to talk about the literal fall of Enkanomiya. The literal fall of Enkanomiya. So this is what I mean by that. So you get to Enkanomiya. We talked about how they were, a civilization. I forget when we said it. I don't know. So Enkanomiya is a civilization that was going along alongside of like the New World. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word there for a second. For the New World. They were part of the New World. They were one of the thriving civilizations. We don't really know much about when it got started or how it got started, but they're this thriving civilization, and what ends up happening is as the calamity strikes, as the great calamity strikes, this is why I think it's all in very quick succession with the Seelie and the Traveler and the calamity striking 30 days later, and then the death of the Moon Sisters, and then Enkanomiya falls, right? So Enkanomiya plunges into the oceans. Like, Enkanomiya literally falls We don't know why it's plunged into the ocean or like what happens that causes it to fall into the ocean, but like Atlantis style, just straight down into the ocean, into the Bishop's realm, or the light realm, which is funny because it's actually a realm of darkness, but it's called the light realm. So tell me how that makes sense. So, excuse me, Atlantis, hello. I know, did that get your attention? Okay, sorry, I was checking my music, make sure I'm not gonna get DMCA'd. Okay, so Enkanomiya plunges into the depths of the oceans, and what ends up happening is they are actually attacked consistently once they go down there. It's not like they all drowned, it's like weirdly they like, you know, Atlantis style, there was like a bubble and then the civilization was still there, living there, but you know, like the movie, but whatever. They go down into the Bishop realm, and the Bishops and the dragons actually ended up, and these were like the followers of the sovereign. Like these were the Bishops that escaped into the oceans who were the followers of the sovereign. So they like hated humanity. So they did everything they could to try and kill him off. But they hated light. So what ended up happening is the Enkanomians, they used lanterns to like ward off the Bishops, because the Bishops thrived in the darkness and believe me, it was very dark. Because what we see now is with the Dainichi Mikoshi, which we'll talk about what that is, which provides light. So what ends up happening, it is stated that during the Primordial One's battle with the second who came, Enkanomiya prayed and lamented, but the Primordial One and the Four Shining Shades did not hear their pleas. That was actually an excerpt from a book. I forgot to write which one it was, but it literally says the Primordial One and the Four Shining Shades did not hear their pleas. So it's indicated there's kind of some like years. A lot of this comes from before Sun and Moon, that like archive of history, the books. So the I forget. So this is the year of darkness that they plunge down into the oceans, right? So then in the third year of darkness, we don't really know what happens. They're just trying to survive. They're trying to not die from all the Bishops, you know, lighting the lanterns, everything. They don't have much source of light. So in the third year of darkness, it says Istaroth, one of the Shining Shades, doesn't actually say one of the Shining Shades, but Istaroth, it does say Istaroth, the ruler of time, hears their lamentations and takes pity on them. So she ends up giving this knowledge to an individual named Abaraku no Mikoto, or also called Abrax. We run into him in the storyline, actually, or not him really, but his leftover soul or whatever. So she gives enough knowledge to Abaraku no Mikoto, or Abrax, so that he could create what's called the Dainichi Mikoshi, or the Helios, referred to as both. So this, right here, this top picture, is the Dainichi Mikoshi, or the Helios. So the year of sight, or the first year of Sun and Moon, is the next kind of area, and next, like, marked year. And so this was when Helios construction was completed. We don't actually know between the time of, like, the third year of darkness and... Thank you. Yes, I had a fantastic photographer that I will talk about later. So... There, we don't know how much time passed between the third year of darkness when Istaroth had pity on them and gave Abrax the knowledge to create the Dainichi Mikoshi, to the first year of sight, or the first year of Sun and Moon. We don't know how much time. I assume probably several years, which, I mean, the civilization had nothing else to do, but like, look how well built this thing is, and like how it's honestly massive. So I don't think they would have gotten it done in a year. It probably took a few years to get it done. But our next big timeline moment is the first year of Sun and Moon, or the year of sight. And so Helios construction was completed, and the White Night came, banishing the Evernight. So the Evernight is the time of darkness, and then the White Night is when light came, and the Bishops, you know, they did not like light. They thrived in darkness, and so they kind of scattered, still in the Bishop realm, still in the area of Enkanomiya, but they kind of stayed away from the Dainichi Mikoshi, or the Helios, because of the light that it was emitting. So then the second year of Sun and Moon, so the year after that, Enkanomiya actually tries to return to the surface. We don't know how they did it. It doesn't talk about that in any of the books that I read, but it just says the second year of Sun and Moon, Enkanomiya tries to return to the surface. But was barred from resurfacing by the heavenly principles. So there's an excerpt. I keep saying excerpt. It says, our ancestors sought the returning way, for surely the war on the surface had ended by then. But the primordial one, the first throne, had laid down a ban, preventing our ancestors from finding the path home. So essentially, the primordial one, in this war with the second who came in the primordial one, actually ended up banning, or like the heavenly principles, which is also thought, you know, like I said earlier, to be the primordial one, same person, heavenly principles, primordial one, thought to be the same thing, right? So he laid down a ban saying that people, like, humanity is no longer allowed to have knowledge of the old world, the seven sovereigns, and how the earth was, like, or not the earth, but how Tevat was created. And because Enkanomiya had that knowledge, because they came from the New World, they knew about how humanity came to the New World, about how Fanes, or the primordial one, reestablished dominion over the land by defeating the seven sovereign. Since they knew that, they were barred from returning, because then they would have had that forbidden knowledge, right? Forbidden knowledge. So they were not allowed to return. So they're stuck in the depths of Enkanomiya, which can't really say in the depths of Enkanomiya, because Enkanomiya was a place that plummeted. But in the depths of the Bishop Realm, they were stuck, and they were barred from entering back into the overworld. So, let's see where I was. So, as a side note, so Byaku Yakoku is also the name for Enkanomiya. It's like the old name for it. We call it Enkanomiya now, but like the civilization at the time probably would have referred to it as Byaku Yakoku. So the three corners of Byaku Yakoku is something we talk about. So there was 3 towers. You know how I talked about the 3 realms and the 3 realms gateway offering, which was the event that happened quite a while ago, like a year and a half, two and a half years ago. I don't know at this point. When Enkanomiya first came around. So the 3 corners of Byaku Yakoku were signified by 3 towers, which symbolized the 3 realms, the Vishap, the Void, and the human realm. And these towers actually were what stabilized the city's winds and waters. And they marked, they were the edge of the territory with the Vishap. So it was kind of like, don't go past the 3 corners of the map. You know, because after that is Vishap territory. Like the White Knight no longer reaches that area. It's all Evernight. Don't go there. And so they were stuck within this bounds of the 3 towers that represented the realms that stabilized that stabilized the weather, stabilized the wind, stabilized the waters, in Enkanomiya depths, Byaku Yakoku, which enabled them to be able to live and to be able to farm and all that, you know. So that's the borders of Byaku Yakoku. So in this time frame, while they're stuck in Enkanomiya, I keep saying stuck in it, technically, whatever, stuck in the depths, we'll say, there were these people that rose up called the Sun Children. Now, this is very sad, just a warning, like, this is pretty rough. So, the quick version is the rulers brought forth these Sun Children that were worshipped, and it's exactly as you think it is. It's a child who was the ruler of Enkanomiya. And they ended up, because of the light that the Helios brought, they ended up worshipping. I know, this is the worst. I know, this is a really sad part. So they ended up worshipping the Dainichi Mikoshi, but what ended up happening is the Sun Children were actually tyrants, but not necessarily because the children were just evil, but because they were actually just the puppets for the, like, I don't know what you want to call it, the council or whatever. Really, it was the council running things, and the Sun Children were just like the figurehead. They just were there for looks. Just so you know, this is a sad part. The Sun Children were actually sacrificed after a certain period. I don't know if it was, I can't remember if it was like when they hit a certain age, and then they would replace them with another Sun Child, but they were actually sacrificed to the Dainichi Mikoshi. So it's pretty sad. And they were like children, like little ones. So yes. So around this time, the Sun Children come around, and it's actually like a time of tyranny and terror, and not a good time to be in Economia. Like, they didn't have, like, they really had the short end of the stick, because they got plunged into the depths, and then on top of that they had like really corrupt rulers who were sacrificing children. So this is the not family friendly portion of this. So they were doing that, and it was not a great place to be. It was not a great civilization at that point. They got pretty desperate, and they were doing really terrible things in their desperation. And they had really terrible leaders leading them. And they kept taking these children, and then they hit a certain point, and then they, with the children, and then they'd replace that child, and then they do the same thing over and over again with all these children who are deemed son children and blessed by the god or whatever. But rather, it was just corrupt people being like, let's just sacrifice some kids for personal gain. So really terrible. That's the end of the really unfamily friendly portion. So keep this in mind, because we'll talk about other parts of Economia, but that's where we're going to leave it for now, because we'll talk about it. Yeah, big ick. Big ick. It's really not... There's some really dark things in Genshin, and this is one of them. This is one of the really dark moments in Genshin. So this is what happens. That's the fall of Economia. We're going to leave it there. We'll talk more about what happens with Economia, but keep in mind, we're left with the time of terror and the time of the Sun Children. I need to take a little... Can you tell my voice is getting hoarse? Rated E for everyone. Not even. Thank you, I will. I will drink some water. I'm just finishing my apricot. I'll have to go get some tea. Okay. Let's keep going. Okay. Economia. Next, we're going to talk about the fall of the Solar Chariot. Cheerio? I almost said Cheerio. Cheerio! Okay. The fall of the Solar Chariot. So, the fall of the Solar Chariot. What is the Solar Chariot? We don't entirely know. It just kind of was like, and the Solar Chariot fell. So here's some context, though. The Solar Chariot is also known, okay, if anybody can tell me this, you get a gold star, right? So, who did I say was in love with the Star of Daybreak? Because the Solar Chariot is also known as the Star of Daybreak. Anybody chat? Anybody chat who is in love with the Star of Daybreak? You'll get a gold star. Use this time to drink water. Anybody? Anybody know who was in love with the Star of Daybreak? An egg roll in another room, rip no star. You don't get a gold star? That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. I'll tell you. I'll tell you. The Moon Sisters, it specifically states in the book that I was reading, it says that the Moon Sisters were in love with the Star of Daybreak. Well, guess what? The Solar Chariot is also known as the Star of Daybreak. And what was the Lunar Chariot? The Lunar Chariot was what took the Moon Sisters to and from their place as the moon as they switched sovereignty 3 times a month, right? So then you could kind of think about how maybe the Solar Chariot had a similar purpose, but for the sun. We don't know to what extent because it's not really talked about. But it's thought that because of this great calamity that happens, it kind of, since it unbalanced the system and unbalanced like the lunar chariot and all that, eventually there's not a reason why specifically stated, but it's thought of that because of the fall of the lunar chariot and the great calamity happening, that the Solar Chariot fell. So also known as the Star of Daybreak. So the Solar Chariot falls to the earth and creates the chasm. So this chasm, as we know it here, is actually created by the Solar Chariot falling. Or the Star of Daybreak. So it's actually interpreted 2 different ways. So one story interprets it as like an object, like an actual chariot or whatever, or however you want to, an object that fell. And actually another source interprets it as like a possible being or an actual, like a star. which there's actually more information about the Solar Chariot in the Archon War, but we won't be talking about that today. But I will say that the Solar Chariot, it falls and then it remains in the chasm until the times of the Archon War, and then stuff happens, but we won't talk about that. So that's the fall of the Solar Chariot, the Star of Daybreak. So it says that the Moon Sisters were in love with the Star of Daybreak. And this is the Solar Chariot, I'm guessing. And it fell to the earth, created this chasm as we see it, and it stayed slumbering or stuck in the chasm, depending on if you take it as one person, or not one person, one source says the being slumbered under the chasm until the time of the Archon War, and then another person says, or another source says that the Solar Chariot falls and remains in the chasm until it was repaired. So there's two different conflicting sources. It depends on how you think of it. One says it's a being who slumbered until the Archon War. Another one says that it was a object that fell and was repaired during the time of the Archon War. So that's something to think about. We don't really know what it is. It'll be interesting to find out more information about this one day. But that's the fall of the Solar Chariot, and that was as a result, most likely, of the Seelie and the Union, and of the Lunar Chariot, and the death of the Moon Sisters, and all that. And Enkanomiya falling, and then the fall of the Solar Chariot, right? And we know it happened pretty quickly because we do know that Morax was alive when the Solar Chariot fell. And it specifically says he was alive for the time of the death of the Moon Sisters and the fall of the Solar Chariot. I can go back to that text if anybody wants to see it. But that was one of the paragraphs I read earlier. So that's the fall of the Solar Chariot. From here, we go to I spelled it wrong, sorry. Nabu Malikata, not Makalata, Malikata and the Jinn. So jumping over, so this is Liyue that we were just talking about there. Jumping over to Sumeru, because Enkanomiya is Inazuma. Nabu Malikata and the Jinn. So jumping over to Nabu. Man, I spelled it wrong both times. I was tired when I was doing this. I just want to give myself a little bit of an excuse. So, Nabu Malikata is actually the goddess of flowers, for those of you who know your Genshin lore. So she, you know how I said earlier, during the fall of the Seelie civilization, that she is actually one of, speculated, most likely, from a lot of texts we've seen, one of the survivors of the Seelie civilization. Oh, hi, Nilu. I know. There's a reason I have Nilu there. So she is speculated to be one of the survivors of the Seelie civilization, though it is unknown as to why she survived and was able to keep her form and her wisdom and her strength, but she was one of the survivors. So it says in the Aranyaka World Quest Part 3 Nursery of Lost Dreams Part 2. So for the children of the past, Arama, one of the little Aranaras, says there was once a survivor of that race deep within the Golden Desert who was friends with Queen Aranyani and the ruler of Veluca. So those are Aranara words, which if you don't know what if you don't know what an Aranara is, definitely look it up. So this is our proof that the goddess of flowers is most likely a Seelie, because when they're talking about, in context, it says there was once a survivor of that race. It was in context of the Seelies. Deep within the Golden Desert, who was friends with Queen Aranyani, who is, we know, Greater Lord Rukkhadevata, and the ruler of Veluca, which we know is one of the civilizations that King, what they call one of the civilizations that King Deshret ruled over. And we also know from that, and I'll talk about the trio of God Kings later, but we know that the trio of God Kings in Sumeru in the pre-Archon War era the trio of God Kings was the Goddess of Flowers, King Deshret, and Greater Lord Rukkhadevata. So all that being said, this is the evidence we have that the Goddess of Flowers, or Nabu Malikata, was actually most likely a Seelie and a survivor of the Seelie race. So what happens is Nabu escapes the Great Calamity. She wanders the barren wastes for 72 days. It does say specifically, she wandered the barren wastes for 72 days. And so from her bleeding feet, springs gushed from her wounds, becoming streams that flowed into gardens. Water lilies grew in these gardens, and the Jinn were born from them. So it's saying that from her bleeding feet, it's kind of weird, I know, springs came forth to fill the barren wastes. And from those springs, the Jinn were born, or what people may call genies. The Jinn were born from them. Which, the reason I put Nilou here is because she is apparently wearing the outfit of the goddess of flowers. Not necessarily the direct one, but it says that her outfit is based on the outfit that the goddess of flowers wore. And so she is kind of representative of the goddess of flowers in this situation. And for those who know, when we talk about the trio of god kings, this will make more sense, but those who you are in the know, this is the goddess of flowers chair in the oasis that was built for her. So that's why I have Nilou sitting on it. So yes. So that's Nabu Malakata. So these Jinn spring forth from these springs, and they actually end up begging her to stay with them. And so she did. She ended up staying with the Jinn in the place where she just kind of ended up with the bleeding feet and the springs and the Jinn and all that. And eventually it kind of says that wherever she walked, purple flowers resembling the moon bloomed wherever she stopped. Also known as the Patisaras, which we see in Sumeru. That's one of the materials you can collect are the flowers, the Patisaras. So those are representative of the goddess of flowers. She is also known as the Lord of Flowers or the Mistress of Dreams. Just so you know, you'll see that kind of referenced in the game. Let's see. As a side note, we have seen that Nabu and the Jinn are connected to the moon, which also could make sense because the Seelie are connected to the moon as well. And you think about the three moon sisters, we don't really know how it all goes together, but there's a lot of connections. And that is Nabu Malakata and the Jinn. And that is how they are created. So this, by the way, is Lilupar. She's the mother of the Jinn that we interact with. And she's actually a pet. I don't really want to call her a pet because she'd probably be offended. But she's actually like one of the little objects that can float around with you. And then this cave drawing here is symbolizes, this is supposed to be Lilupar with her eventual husband. I forgot what his name is. But this is what this is. We find that in her story quest. Okay. So next, this is a fun part, and it's actually pretty short, but we're going to talk about the beginning of Khaenri'ah, the Khaenri'ah civilization, which is actually very prevalent, not the civilization, but like it's very lore heavy in the content that we're having now, in terms of like the cataclysm, which we won't talk about for a long time. But they played a big role. But right now it's just kind of prefacing like how they began, so there's not a ton of information because the brunt of all the Khaenri'ah information is going to come post Archon War. But just for the time being, so let's just talk about the beginnings of Khaenri'ah. So we don't actually know exactly when Khaenri'ah started, but I do believe it would have been during the like just starting kind of towards the end of the era of darkness. And the reason why is because when Solvin falls, which happens at the end of the era, we know that there's a scribe that says, I've heard of a people who are building a new nation without gods. Perhaps they'll have the power to stand against the world. So that's why I put the start of Khaenri'ah in the era of darkness, but probably more towards the end because they were in the middle of kind of building the civilization when Solvin Dagnir falls, but we don't talk about that till pre-Archon War era, after the Divine Nails fall. So the beginning of Khaenri'ah, so they are known as a godless nation, and very purposefully so. They built their nation outside of the realm of Teyvat outside of the realm of Celestia and the powers that be, the heavenly principles, because they didn't agree with them, and their whole goal was to stand up against the heavenly principles and to battle Celestia. So they actually practiced the art of Kamiya, possibly, if you want to call it that, which is a form of alchemy based on the creation of life. So I mentioned earlier Rhine-Daughter or Gold. She is the individual who created Durin, that dragon. She also created like the Albedos. And so that's kind of been her whole or not her whole, but that was the whole focus of Khaenri'ah, was this form of alchemy. They were also known to be very technologically advanced because they built all of the like rune machines, so like the rune guards, the rune graders, the rune drakes, all that. They're pretty technologically advanced with like their weaponry, as you can see if you play the game. So that was the beginning of Khaenri'ah, though. We know was sometime during the era of darkness, which allows them to then, then Ukko, the scribe, the last scribe of Salvan Dagnar. It makes sense in the timeline why he would say that. So that is Khaenri'ah. Not a ton of information about them now. This right here is speculated. We found this in game in one of the most recent updates of Sumeru, and this is speculated to actually be the entrance into Khaenri'ah, for reasons I won't talk about now, but it's speculated to be the entrance into Khaenri'ah. And then we just... For anybody else who wants some emotional damage, we have Kari Bear, who actually is a Khaenri'an. Same with, I forget what his name is. I don't need to remember his name. I don't like him that much. Another Khaenri'an. And then we do know that Dainsleif and Kaya come from Khaenri'ah, so they are Khaenri'ans as well. And then this is the Sinner, which doesn't really make sense if you don't play the game. But this crystal is known as the Sinner. So these are just some people from Khaenri'ah. We don't have any really images. We just have some kind of little tidbits, other than this is possibly the door into Khaenri'ah. Okay, we're almost through, and then we're going to take a little break. So lastly, we're going to talk about one of the most important events that happened, and which also signifies the end of the era of darkness, right? So we have the divine nails. The divine nails. So what happens with the divine nails? Essentially, somebody wins between the primordial one and the second who came, right? Sources show that most likely the primordial one is the one who came out triumphant over the second who came. We don't actually have super definitive evidence in the term of like, we don't have a book that's like the primordial one won. But we do have a little excerpt from Before Sun and Moon that says Enkanomiya people speculated that the primordial one won the battle, won the war between the two. So that's why people, think, okay, the primordial one most likely won through this. But we don't have like definitive, like the primordial one was triumphant, So just so you know, it's most likely that the primordial one was actually the individual who won the war. But what ended up happening, as you can see, there was so much destruction in this time frame, and it was so hard because all the land was destroyed. Apparently, the ley lines were in disarray. They were whacked out. They were just wild. And so many things, like the Sealy fell. The Godless Nation was started because of this. The Moon Sisters fell. The Solar Chariot fell. And so many other civilizations were destroyed too that I didn't even talk about. I just talked about the big ones and the big things happening here. And people were turning against the primordial one. They were turning against the heavenly principles. So it was just so much going on in the era of darkness. So what ends up happening is I'll say the primordial one, the individual who, I'll say the victor, ends up sending down these divine nails from the heavens that were designed to heal the ley lines from the poison that had been connected to them. The ley lines were poisoned and they were in disarray, and so in order to heal Teyvat and the Teyvat's ley lines, they cast down these divine nails, right? And these divine nails, the sad thing is, although they were designed to heal the ley lines, they actually caused like so much further destruction to the land of Teyvat. Wherever the divine nails landed was just calamity. And so on top of everything, it's like, yeah, the primordial one won, and the primordial one is the benevolent God who loves us and takes care of us. And it's like, well, he cast down, which I get the ley lines were in disarray and Teyvat probably would have crumbled, but it was like he, it was like sacrifice the one to save the many, but it was like sacrifice the thousands to save the millions. So he cast down the divine nails. They landed in various places around Teyvat. We don't actually know where they all landed. We do have some known locations because of either texts or obviously these are the divine nails here. This one is the Skyfrost nail, which is located above the Dragon Spine or the Salvandagnir civilization. And then this one is located in the chasm. I don't know if it has a name. I know this one's called the Skyfrost Nail. But yeah, so then the one located in the chasm. But other locations, I put summer, that's funny. Other locations we know of are Sumeru. There's one that landed in the desert because of texts that we have. We know one landed there. And then Tsurumi Island in Inazuma actually has a divine nail as well. That's why they were kind of cast in. And we'll talk about Tsurumi Island a little bit later. But that's why Tsurumi Island was like cast into like great fog and storms and all this crazy stuff happened was because of that. And then Mondstadt was the Skyfrost Nail, and obviously what was once a very verdant and lush land, when the Skyfrost Nail fell onto Irminsul, it fell directly onto Irminsul, it iced everything out. So everything was ice and storms and, you know, not good. And then the chasm, obviously there's stuff happening in the chasm. That's a whole, you know, obviously you can see the terrain around the chasm. And then we have not seen evidence of the Sumeru one and the Tsurumi Island one, but we do know from text that there were nails that fell there. We don't know how many nails fell, but we do know that many fell in order to heal the ley lines. So those are the divine nails. So here's two excerpts. So it says, from the Staff of Scarlet Sands, it says, in the original world, the barriers were torn down and the dark poison had penetrated the earth. To heal that fragile, sad, and imperfect world, the spikes descended and pierced through the earth's crust. And then the Flower of Paradise Lost Amethyst Crown says, but the master of the heavens, consumed by fear for the rising tide of delusions and breakthroughs, sent down the divine nails to mend the land, laying waste to the mortal realm. So that's kind of our evidence of why the divine nails were sent down. The poison that penetrated the earth and the ley lines, and also the rising tide of delusions and breakthroughs due to forbidden knowledge. So that's kind of what we have going on. And this, like I said, signifies the end of the Era of Darkness. So the Era of Darkness ends at this point, which then pushes us into the pre-Archon War era. So now we're going to be in the pre-Archon War era, which I will tell you, a lot happens. I know I said a lot happens in the Era of Darkness, but a lot of big events happen in the Era of Darkness. But then the pre-Archon War era is kind of like people trying to pick up the pieces after all this destruction. So a lot of civilizations are created and a lot of different stuff's going on. So we're gonna take a little break here. But I will end up kind of doing bullet points. There's like a lot of big things that happen, but I don't have time to go through each thing because so many things happen. Like so many civilizations start popping up. Some really big civilizations start popping up. People are picking up the pieces. All the gods are there, you know, all the leftover gods from the big fight. And, you know, we're preparing for the Archon War era. So we'll dive into that. But in the meantime, we're going to take a break. I'm going to make some tea. So it'll probably be about 5 minutes. So everybody can get their brains working again. Because I know I'm giving so much information. So in the meantime, just kind of enjoy, drink some water. I'm going to do the same. And we're going to take a quick break. And then we'll wrap up with the pre-Archon War era. And don't forget, everybody, if we get one more sub, we will get one more emote. And we'll also get our 15 sub reward. So I'm just saying, I'm a little biased. But like maybe if someone wants to sub, or if you know someone that wants to sub, or if you have a Prime Gaming subscription that you're not using, I'm just saying, it'd be kind of exciting if we had our second reward. Really, our first one. You could get a doctorate for your thesis. Thank you. I appreciate it. I put a lot of effort into this. I really was trying stories, so thanks. I really wanted it to be good. I didn't want you guys to be bored. I find it really interesting. I'm like, there's so much information. Like, it's really kind of cool how Hoyo just puts so much into their lore. Like, if you think about it, every single artifact piece has lore. Every weapon has lore. You know, it's just like all the little things. It's really, really cool. So yeah, like I said, I'm gonna go make some tea real quick just because my throat is getting a little bit hoarse. And then we'll go through the pre-Archon War era. And that'll be, I think I'm kind of right on time. I said I thought it would take me about 3 hours to do this, and I'm I think it'll take me about 45 minutes to do the rest, so that makes sense. So yes, I hope you're enjoying it so far, everybody, and I'll talk to you in just a few minutes once I make my tea. Okay, I'll be right back, and enjoy your break, drink some water, stare at the wall, process the information. Okay, bye. All right, I am back. Let me fix my hair here. Feeling a little bit better. Got my tea, and oh my gosh, you guys, I was not expecting this. We hit our sub goal. I can't even. I was not even prepared. That wasn't even like within the realm of possibility for me today. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys for really supporting me and hitting my sub goal. I'm literally shocked right now. I had to, because I usually keep my little mobile dashboard up while I take my breaks, and I saw that we got that announcement. Fighter Felix, thank you! Thank you so much, Fighter Felix, for giving me that 15th sub. For gifting that 15th sub, excuse me. I really appreciate you. I appreciate all of you guys. All my new subscribers, my followers, you guys are the absolute best. I just, thank you. I really, really appreciate it. You guys just mean the world to me, and I can't believe we hit 15 subs. I literally, that just was not even within the realm of possibility, honestly. In my brain, I was like, yeah, that'll probably be like 6 months, maybe a year. But the fact that we just hit our goal is just insane to me. So again, just thank you. I appreciate y'all. You guys just mean so much to me. So thank you to my followers. Thank you to my subscribers. I couldn't do it without you. I really couldn't, because it would just be me talking to me, and that would just be the worst. All right, are we ready to dive back in? Let me just drink a little sip of my tea, because I was like, it's a little hot. A little hot. All right, we're almost there, friends. We got a little bit longer to go. I'm just so giddy right now. I can't get over the fact that we hit 15 subscribers. I looked up the goal, by the way, and I'm actually looking forward to this, but I'm gonna have to practice because I haven't been drawing that much lately. But our 15, okay, so we hit our 15 subscriber goal because you guys are the absolute best. But you know what that means is chat gets to draw a Genshin character. You're right, September is ending soon. Next sub goal is 25. Do you want me to put it up? I'll put it up. Let me edit my goal real quick. I just love seeing the 15 sub. I love seeing it full. Okay, the next goal is 25. So I looked it up while I was on break because I was like, let me check, because I need to see what the rewards were too. And so the reward for 15 subs, excuse me, is chat draws a Genshin character. So basically what that means is, let's see, hold on, start new goal. Wow, I love seeing that. Let me screenshot it. Yeah. Start no goal. New goal is 25. And that will be Helldivers with a group of my friends, which is a little bit something different for the channel, but I think it could be really fun and a lot of chaos. There we go. Okay, I got it set up. 25 is the next goal. Basically 10 more. Yeah, I was re-looking just to make sure. I kind of just jump 10 up from here on out. So like the next goal. Oh, Helldivers is a third-person shooter. Well, it's like a top-down kind of shooter game, but it's got it's really fun to play with 4 players. And so what it is I'll be playing this shooter game. Sorry, I was doing multiple things at once. I'll be doing this shooter game with 3 of my friends, and one of them being my husband. And it just kind of tends to be chaos, but a lot of fun when we play, and there's like a lot going on. So definitely look it up. It is different. It is different than what I would normally play, because I usually do cozy games, but I wanted to do something different and unique that I don't normally do for my goals, because if it was just something that I normally do, it wouldn't be as fun, you know? Because it's like, well, you do that all the time. So yes, Helldivers. I know, definitely different. It's still family friendly, but you do fight, well, there's different groups of people you can fight. You can fight robots, you can fight bugs, or you can fight genetically modified human beings. Hardening you. That's what it is. It's just one step closer to alien isolation. Oh gosh. Hey, I should say this too, which is easier to get to the subscriber goal, I guess. But the next follower goal is 75. The next follower goal is 75, and I'll be playing It Takes Two with my husband, actually. So both of our next goals are I get to bring in guest people. I get to bring in guests. So that's a lot of fun. So 75 followers, 25 subscribers. But you guys, I couldn't ask for more than 15. That was Just, you guys are way more generous. Just, I don't deserve it, but thank you. I really appreciate it. I just was not expecting it. I'm just so thankful. I'm gonna eat apples. Okay. We gotta get going. Listen. Alien Isolation was 100 subscribers. Or maybe I said 1,000. I'll have to go back and watch the VOD. I maybe said 1,000. But the condition was only if the alien is Big Bird. That was the condition. So when y'all get me... Stop it. Story? I'm gonna cry, that's fine. Stop it! Oh my gosh! Story, that is way generous. I really appreciate that. I just can't even.
Let's go!
That's crazy! That's crazy. I was like hoping we'd get one more follower this stream. That was my goal setting. That's way generous. Story, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. You don't even know how much it means to me. That's literally crazy to me, though, that... Wow. Alien is getting near... Okay, I will seriously play Alien Isolation if this is how it's gonna go. I can't believe you gifted 10 subs. Thank you. That really does mean so much to me. I really appreciate it. This is like my wildest dreams being fulfilled, and it's kind of crazy right now. I don't know what to do about it. So thank you, thank you, thank you. The solo VIP approves and thanks you. I'll hand out my VIPs, you guys. I'm just lazy. I gotta do it, I know. I got a lot of them. But thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm like in shock right now. It won't happen again till next year. That's fine. I'll take it. I was like, that's crazy. I literally, my one goal was to get one more follower so I could actually be at 60 again. But this is like way more than I don't like. It's just very generous of you guys. Thank you. I'm like in shock. I don't know what to do. Thank you. That's all I can say. Thank you. That's just so generous of you. And I really appreciate it. And I hope everybody will be thankful who got the gifted subs. That was very kind. And yeah, I mean, now's the time to do it for September. My goodness. Oh my gosh, my next goal is 35. I can't, I'll get back into it. My brain's just like glitching right now. I'm just like, 25 subs was like sometime 2 years from now. You should have someone new with nothing to do with story or anything. All right, I get it. I was gonna do it anyway. I'll hand out my VIPs after this, okay, you guys? I only get 10 of them though, so it's hard because I don't like picking favorites. You know what I mean? That's what it feels like. Someone's gonna get left out. But yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, we gotta continue. I gotta get back on track. Let me eat the rest of my apple. And let's blitz through this next section. I'll say it one more time. Thank you so much for the gifted sub story and for everybody else who gifted and subscribed themselves. Thank you. It means the world to me. I really appreciate it. You have no idea. It's literally like my wildest dreams. I would have never thought that I'd get 25 subs right now. That was like a 2 years from now kind of goal. So thank you. Next, we got to work on our followers. Spread the word. I'd love to get 75 followers. Okay. Let me get my brain on straight. We're going into the pre-Archon War era. Stop that! I'm gonna cry. Stop that! I don't know what's happening! I don't know what's happening anymore! I don't know what's going on! You guys! Why are you so nice to me? I'm crying a little. Why? No, I haven't listed. Oh my gosh, I was like, my sub goals are gonna last me like a year. Oh my gosh, you're right. Jasper, I think I'm already broken. I don't know what to do anymore. Oh no! This means I'm cosplaying! I I'm so unprepared. You guys, this means I'm cosplaying, and I need to write a new set of goals. You guys, I also have, that's crazy. More than half of my followers are now subscribed. When does that ratio ever happen?
Emotional damage.
I'm dying. I don't even know what to do with myself anymore. You guys, you are just too generous for me. Oh my gosh. My voice is going hoarse. You guys, thank you. Fighter Felix, thank you. I really, really appreciate it. It really means a lot to me. I don't know what to do with my life. I'm broken now. I'm just like, what's happening? I thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I really appreciate it. I know I'm never gonna finish. We're just gonna be here forever. And we're just gonna leave on a cliffhanger. That's what's really, yourself. Don't cut yourself. We're gonna leave on a cliffhanger. Okay. That's crazy, you guys. I have to cosplay now, and I've never cosplayed before, but that was the deal. 35 subscribers, I get to cosplay a character. And chat gets to help me pick. Within reason, chat, okay? I'm still keeping it family friendly. That's crazy. So I guess if anybody has ideas for what you'd want to see me cosplay, like I said, family friendly. I do have some restrictions, because there are, put up a new goal. 45, I guess? Stop. Put up a new goal? I don't even have goals written. Okay, I'm gonna do it, but like, I don't even have goals written for after 35. That was like a 2 years from now goal. Oh my gosh. I mean, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna just go big and bold. This might be too bold, but I was like, you know what? I can always lower it later. There we go, new goals up. I was gonna do 45, but then I was like, I'm 5 away from 50, so you might as well just put 50 up. That's crazy. You guys are too good to me. Okay, you've heard that the bunker is a nice family-friendly game to have as a next sub-goal? Just kidding. Okay, I've never heard of the bunker, so I definitely took you serious for a moment. Okay, no. If Kiniana's over here like, LOL, yeah, the perfect game to play, that's not it. Maybe, what about, well, I want to do something that's different, though, because I was like, what about Dave the Diver? But that's kind of in line with my, like, that was when I was planning on playing, so that's why I'm like, I don't know, chat, do you guys have any goals? Ideas? I'm so lost. I don't even know. But the problem is like, Dave the Diver is something that I would normally do. And so I'm trying to do something that I wouldn't necessarily normally do. You know what I mean? Because that's why it's a reward, because it's like something out of the normal. That's what makes it fun. The Outer Wilds? I've wanted to play that one. That could be cool. What if the 50 subscriber reward is chat picks the game? With rules. With no alien isolation, no bunker, but what if or I don't know, I'm trying to think what else it could be. I'm trying to think of something fun. What makes you guys excited? What do you want to see me do? I guess that's really what I try to do with my goals, is try to think of what you guys would want to see me do. Wow. I'm like, my brain's just glitched out. I don't even know what to do anymore. Okay. Thank you, Fighter Felix. Thanks for keeping me on track. I'm gonna do it this time. I'm gonna continue the lore. Oh, that's so good! Story, I love that idea. Let me write it down real quick so I don't forget. So, I guess we have two. No, we have one option. I'm not counting the bunker. I mean, I guess we have two. But I technically suggested Dave the Diver. But the Outer Wilds is one suggestion. We're gonna do like a wheel of, and we'll spin it. Okay, chat, if you got any games you want me to play, within reason, what is Outlast? Okay, I can't tell if you guys are being sarcastic anymore. I can't tell if you guys are serious or sarcastic about games that I'd actually want to play. Okay, the Outer Wilds is listed. No, if Kindian is saying it's another perfect choice, I just don't feel like it's a perfect choice. I'm sorry, Kindiana, I don't believe you. Okay, I'm gonna continue with lore, but if people think of games that you want to add to the list that I can put on the wheel to spin, we'll do it. And I'll write a list. I mean, we haven't hit 50 followers. Subscribers. We'd have to hit 50, but I'll keep the list anyway, and then one day when we hit 50, I'll spin the wheel. Okay. Lore. It's really hard to stay focused now. Horror games are out of the picture, I'm just saying. Pre-Archon War era. So the pre-Archon War era, obviously, is kind of the lead up to the Archon War. So, like I said, the era of darkness happened. Death, destruction, everything destroyed. The divine nails fall, right? And so everybody who's surviving is kind of left to pick up the pieces of what's going on. Yes, chat, you are being distracting, but it's okay. In the best way. I'm deeply sorry. It's okay. It's okay. I'm fine. It's just because I'm excited because I have 35 subscribers and my brain can't compute that. Pre-Archon War era. So, what we're going to be talking about is instead of breaking it up into events like I kind of have been previously, what I'm going to do is break it up into region, and obviously not all of the regions are listed, and I know Fontaine's out, but there was not enough information that I wanted to include, so right now we're just going to focus on the 4 main regions we've explored already, which is Mondstadt, Liyue, Inazuma, and Sumeru. So like I said, we'll be focusing on the region and what's going on in the region. And we're gonna do it a little bit quicker just because there's so much going on in each region, if that makes sense. There's a couple bigger things that I'll touch on, but for the most part, we're just gonna kind of be like, okay, this. I feel ready for a history lesson now. Good though. I'm glad you're ready for the history lesson now, but it's almost over. So as you can see, we have some beautiful pictures taken of the various regions. And now into the pre-Archon War era we go. Starting with Mondstadt. So here's the big thing that we are going to spend just a minute about, or minute on, excuse me, is, as I said, the one thing we do know is that Salvandagnir civilization falls or is destroyed after the divine nail falls. Now, we don't know if it's like immediately, which, I mean, evidence shows that it's not like immediately, but could it have been within a few days, within a few years? I'm not sure. My best guess is it probably happened within a couple years that it was destroyed, but Salvandagnir falls when the divine nails come down, and it lands directly onto the tree of Irminsul, and it's destroyed, and then it freezes the land, so it's no longer a prosperous land. Like, they're not able to farm anymore, you know, they don't have food, so on and so forth. And then also, because just, you know, this massive pillar falling down also just, you know, causes a lot of calamity around it. And then on top of that, just changing the weather and everything so rapidly. I'm guessing life dies off really quickly. They can't sustain themselves because they weren't prepared for like an instantaneous freeze, so on and so forth. So, okay, so someone that is important to mention is a traveler named Imun Locker, who is actually this guy right here, who, Blizzard Strayer. He actually is wearing the Blizzard Strayer set from the TCG. RimWorld or Sims 4 to the list. Okay. I'm writing that real quick. We gotta hit 50 followers, or I keep saying followers because my brain can't compute subscribers. We gotta hit 50 subscribers though before we do the roulette wheel. So what ends up happening is Imun Locker was a traveler that was living in Salvandagnir at the time, and the story says that he was actually really close to the princess of Salvandagnir, who we mentioned earlier. But when the divine nails fell, he vowed to venture out to find a way to save the civilization. So what ended up happening is the princess made him a great sword of the star silver that was located in Salvandagnir, and creating the snow-tombed star silver, which is a great sword weapon that we got. Or you can, I think it was an event weapon maybe. But you get the snow-tombed star silver. So with the snow-tombed stars, I cannot talk right now. My brain's still glitching. With the snow-tombed star silver in tow, Imunlakar leaves Salvandagnir in search of a way to save the civilization. Now, we do not know how long he was gone for, but what it does say is that when he returned empty-handed, and he found out that everybody in the civilization was already dead. He leaves. We don't know what happens to him, but we do know that there's something called the Imunlakar clan, and he is obviously the one who started the Imunlakar clan. So he does have descendants, but we don't know. So Imunlakar ventures out to try to save the civilization with the snow-tombed star silver given to him by the princess, but he unfortunately comes back empty-handed to find out that everybody had died, including the princess. So now, backing up a little...
Then perish.
That was so appropriate and sad. Seeing everyone dead. Oh, that was so appropriate, but really sad. Okay. So, backing up just a little bit, before everybody died out, the princess actually took one live branch from the tree of Irminsul that had survived, and she tried to graft it onto another tree in Dragonspine, but because of the unhospitable conditions of, everything being instantaneously frozen, she unfortunately was unable to keep the grafted tree alive, and she ended up dying right next to the tree, which is really sad. And that's how we know the princess dies, and she dies right next to the tree where she tried to graft the branch of Irminsul onto, but it was not sustainable. Okay, so moving on from there, we have Decarabian's Mondstadt. So we're just going to touch briefly because we'll talk more about Decarabian's Mondstadt in the next lore stream, because... Sorry, that was weird. That was weird. My Twitch studio just did something really weird. I'm just making sure I'm still connected. Okay, I'm still connected. We're good. Okay, that was weird. It just glitched everything. So Decarabian's Mondstadt, we're just talking, this is when it starts. So Decarabian, in the time of the pre-Archon War era, Decarabian, who is the god of storms, founded a civilization sometime, like I said, in this era, and this predated, obviously, Venti's Mondstadt, and we know that it spread over most of Mondstadt as we know it today. It was a massive civilization that spread over most of Mondstadt, not just the little city we know as as Venti's Mondstadt, but it apparently was very massive and vast and spread over a large surface area of Mondstadt. And so that's Decarabian's Mondstadt. We will talk more about that during the Archon War era, because that's kind of when the brunt of everything happens with Decarabian. And kind of eventually how Venti rises up and all that. So that's Decarabian's Mondstadt. Next, we're going to talk about Andrias. So obviously Andrias, the Great Wolf Lord, also the weekly boss. When you cosplay, you need to dress up your cat. I'd get a giant cat painted like the She'd be so mad. Wait, that's such a good idea, though. What if I bought a giant mug and then I painted it like how I have it painted in the emoji? Be fantastic. Okay. So Andrias, we know at some point, though not entirely sure when, we do know it happens, pre-Archon War era, but we don't know exactly when in that, because he's able to fight with his powers in the Archon War era. So Andrias gains his powers from a god, and people think it is possibly a Seelie because of this excerpt from A Drunkard's Tale, Volume 3, the book from Mondstadt. It says, finally, so let me preface this, the Wolf King is wandering around the Dark Sea and finds the ruins of the ancient Seelie civilization, and he hears singing. So it says, finally, he came to an inner room where he saw a fair maiden strumming at her instrument. Her skin was ashen white, and her head was bowed down. her slender fingers gently stroking the fragile strings of the lute as she played a long forgotten and mournful melody. The wolf sat down in front of the pale young maiden and forgot all about the pain of hunger, thirst, and loneliness for a short while. As it listened in silence to her song. "What is this song that you play?" the wolf asked, puzzled, for it understood every line, every word, every syllable she spoke, and yet hers was a language that it had never heard before, quite unlike that of any other living being. "A song of the Seelie," replied the pale young maiden in a soft voice. "Long, long ago, we wrote this song for the human savages, yet now we sing it to mourn our own fate." So that's crazy because that would show that at least the individual he interacted with was a Seelie. So he met another Seelie that was alive who survived the curse. And then it goes on to talk more about how he eventually ends up getting powers. And so people think that this Seelie is the individual or the god that ended up giving Andreas his powers over ice. And he eventually becomes like the god of ice or frost or something. So that's kind of the story of Andreas. And also the other second Seelie that we know about that survived the calamity. Okay, now that is enough for Mondstadt. Moving on to Liyue. So in Liyue, we have a lot going on as well. Most importantly, we have the Gwaili Assembly. And this is the civilization that was created by the union, not necessarily marriage in this case, but union in terms of like friendship of the goddess of dust, Havria. Excuse me, I put Havria, I meant the goddess of salt, but Guizhong, sorry. Fix that. Guizhong, and the god of Geo, Morax or Rex Lapis. So these two individuals came together. I don't know if we know a ton about how they befriended each other. I know we know some, or how they initially met, but they met and they became friends, and they eventually decided to create this civilization in Liyue called the Gwaili Assembly. And they were also supported by other gods in this civilization, such as like the god of the stove, Marcosius, which is also Guoba, and by the Adepti, because at this point the Adepti were existing. Like I said, Ganyu's in this civilization. I don't know if Zhao is. I don't know how old Zhao is, but people like Convertainer, Mountain Carver, they all existed at this point, though I don't know how they came to be. But yes, they would have existed, and so they were supported, like Guizhong and Zhongli, or Morax, were supported in this civilization by other Adepti and gods as well. So it's kind of one big happy civilization at this point, trying to pick up the pieces after the second Who Came battle. And they were also known to be highly advanced, a highly advanced civilization with advanced engineering. And we kind of saw a little bit of that in this video of Guizhong and Zhongli. It showed a little bit of some of, at least her proclivity towards engineering and being more advanced in technology. So yes, Morax and Guizhong right here. She's adorable. I love her. I just needed an excuse to talk about Guizhong. Next, we have the Sea God civilization. So I don't know a ton about this, and I didn't do a ton of research on it. It just was one of the listed kind of big civilizations. And it talks about how there was this sea god who ruled over a people, and he promised the people a year without storms and tsunamis in exchange for a human bride, in which they gave him that. And eventually his human bride returns to the surface, and her village is destroyed, and it becomes a whole thing. But there was a civilization, just known as the Sea God civilization, that was pretty big, but he exchanged a year without storms and tsunamis for a human bride. Kind of weird, I know. Next, we have the Havria civilization. So this civilization is based off the god Havria. Yes. Why do we never see a dragon form? Did he lose his ability in ways strongly? I'll start with the second question first. I don't believe Zhongli is hated. He shouldn't be. I mean, he's considered at least lore-wise, he's not hated. And gameplay-wise, he's actually got really, really great mechanics and shields. So I, at least personally, have not seen much hatred towards him. But in terms of Nuvalet, the water dragon of Fontaine, I don't believe it's a matter of transforming or not. It's that he was, and I don't know if they necessarily could transform, even the original water dragon, but he's a reincarnation of the original water dragon. And he was born in a humanoid form. Though it's not actually known why he was born in a humanoid form. So I don't believe it's a matter of, like, can he transform or not? I believe it's actually he was born into a human form. And it's not like, at least at this point, we don't know, because not all of the Fontaine lore is out. We don't know. He could end up transforming, but from what my little knowledge is on this subject so far, is that he was just born into a humanoid form. Like, when the other Hydro Dragon died, he was reincarnated as a human. Not really a human, but a humanoid form. So that's why we don't see him in a dragon form, is because he's not a dragon. He is a dragon, but he's not a dragon. He's a human. We don't entirely know how their cycle of, like, reincarnation and rebirth is. We just know that the Seven Sovereign could never actually die. I mean, they die, but their form is, like, their soul is passed on to another one. And usually they're often born as a dragon again, from what I understand. But for some reason, the human water dragon was born as a human. So that should answer your question. Good questions. I like them. So Havria is the goddess of salt, and she was said to be very, very kind to her people and a very caring god, but unfortunately she was very weak, not a very strong god, which results in poor things later. But in the meantime, this is kind of the start of her civilization on Saltaray, is in Liyue. She was one of the civilizations. She was kind of the head of that. Not really related to either the Sea God civilization or the Guili Assembly. I guess this reformed form is weaker. I guess we don't actually. I mean, by sheer size, probably, because the Seven Sovereign are pretty massive. So yeah, in a sense, I guess he is weaker. But I would say he's still probably very strong, comparatively to, like, other humans and humanoids. Okay, so the Lisha civilization is based in Lisha, Liyue, which is, like, a region. I don't actually have a ton of information on it. It was just one of the bigger named civilizations that was starting in this era. And then lastly, we have the village at Wu Wing Hill, which now, right here, and I should say, sorry, this is Saltaray. This is the inside of Saltaray. This is the Guili Assembly. And then down here is the Lisha civilization, kind of the remains of it, which, as you can see, which is just a little bit of ruins, but it's massive size. So it used to be quite a massive civilization. And then lastly, we have the village at Wu Wing Hill, which is the ghost hill now. You know, you kind of go there with Hu Tao. Yeah, Underdog, welcome, Genshin lore stream. Genshin lore stream. It has been a great day. It's been a fantastic day. Glad you could make it, though. But we're nearing the end. So we're talking about Liyue right now in the pre-Archon War era. So, as I said, one of the other kind of, it wasn't as big of a civilization, but it does talk about how one of the kind of towns that was popping up was the village we see at Wu Wing Hill, which is now the kind of the ghost town. You know, there's all the ghosts there that Hu Tao likes to go to. So that's the village at Wu Wing Hill. And those are some of the images that kind of go along with it, some of the ruins. So that's Liyue. Next, we're going to talk about Inazuma. So with Inazuma, this is a part we are going to spend a minute on, because we have the, let me get back to it. Okay, so we have the rise of Enkanomiya. So we talked a lot about the fall of Enkanomiya and how it fell into the oceans and how they were barred from coming back. So here's what happened. So you know how I spoke on the three corners of Byakuya-Koku, or also known as Enkanomiya, the three corners which marked the territory of the humans and the Enkanomians versus the territory of the bishops, right? You didn't go past the three corners because that was the bishop's territory and you'd most likely die. And they also represented the three pillars of the realms, the bishop light realm, the abyssal void realm, and the human realm. So you have these three pillars of Byakuya-Koku, of Enkanomiya, that marks the territory. So, but they're kind of fed up at this point, a lot of the Enkanomians, with like the the Sun Children, and what's going on, and all of the corrupt rulers, the fall of anemia. That's funny. Um, yes, that's funny. So they're kind of fed up with it. So actually, because of all the Sun Children stuff going on, there's kind of a group of children that talk about leaving the border and trying to just find anything, like just leaving and trying to find any way out, any way back to the surface, or anything to try and make life better. And so one child is actually brave enough. I don't think the child has a name, but one child is actually brave enough to venture past the border of Enkanomiya and into the territory of the bishop. So what ends up happening is, after traveling for a while, this child finds the serpent Orobashi. And Orobashi is a god from Teyvat Overworld who ended up fleeing to the Bishop realm because it stated that Orobashi could not beat the golden god or could not beat Ai, who was acting as the Raiden Shogun. And so he was tired of being shamed for blasphemy, is the word choice. So Orobashi flees into the Bishop realm to hide out so that he's not, blamed for, or shamed for blasphemous behavior when he's not doing that. So I'm curious though, did you have to practice how to pronounce these names? Some of them are very hard. I have practiced some of them, but luckily as I've played the game, a lot of them have been introduced to me over time, and so I've said them a bunch now, but it's true. I've always had to practice them when I first learn of it. I'm like, Enkanomiya? I'm like, what? It's a hard one. And like Byaku Yakoku, where's that one? I don't think it's listed here, but it's another big word. There's a lot of stuff. I bet the closed captions can't pick it up, but there are a lot of big words. So this kid finds Orobashi, who is hiding out in the Bishop realm. And the kid basically goes up to Orobashi, and Orobashi doesn't attack him because Orobashi's not evil, but is actually pretty curious about the human child. And the kid, we don't have a ton of context, but essentially the kid is like, will you be our god? Because of the terror, the tyranny of the Sun Children. And Orobashi's like, yeah, sure, why not? So Orobashi ends up ruling over Enkanomiya in the Bishop realm, and actually is a really great god to them. Like, he ends the tyranny of the Sun Children, ends the corrupt practices, ends, just tries to make life more hospitable for them. He ends up teaching them the customs of the overworld. He teaches them instead of speaking the old language of Watatsumi, Orobashi teaches them the language of the Narukami, which was at the time the overworld language. And what ends up happening is, after he's, I don't know how many years it is, we don't exactly know, but after Orobashi teaches them all this and helps them learn and helps cultivate a better society, he is able to bring them back up to the surface. So this is actually the rise of Enkanomiya rather than the fall. It's funny because the history of Enkanomiya starts with the fall and ends with the rise, whereas everything else starts with the rise and ends with the fall. So Enkanomiya rises back up to the overworld of Teyvat. Everything that they've wanted, right? But it's been like so many years at this point. But they rise back up to the top into the overworld of Teyvat, and Orobashi, which is a snake, by the way. Orobashi is a snake who is covered in coral. And so Orobashi, it says, breaks off a coral from his back, and with it contains his magical powers, it contains his abilities, and he's able to create Watatsumi Island with it, which Watatsumi Island is right here. And you can see some of the coral that's growing out of it. So I assume that some of this coral is probably from Orobashi. So Orobashi helps them rise up out of the depths of the Bishop realm into the overworld of Teyvat, and creates them Watatsumi Island from a coral using his powers off his back, and teaches them, he had taught them the language of the Narukami, and then also he then introduces them into Inazuma culture and Narukami culture, allowing them to acclimate into normal society. And they continue to worship him, which then you kind of start calling them the people of you don't really call them Enkanomiyans anymore. They're like the people of Watatsumi. And so they acclimate into society again after many, 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 many years of being in the darkness and worshiping the Dainichi Mikochi and the Sun Children and all the terrible events that were happening. So kind of looking at just a little bit, what ends up happening is Orobashi does end up dying in the Archon War, but we'll talk a little bit more about why he dies and what ends up happening. So we're gonna blah 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 blah. Okay, so that is the rise of Enkanomiya. Okay. So next we have the Tanuki and the Kitsune War. So I hesitated to put this in to this section at least because there's a little bit of inconsistency in the information on whether or not it, like, when it took place, because there is some information that said that it took place during the time of, like, kind of pre-Archon, post-Second Who Came. But then I was reading another book that says the war between the Tanuki and the Kitsune happened before humanity, like, came to the Earth. That would make it the Old World, which is kind of crazy because there's no evidence of life in the Old World other than the Bishops and the Dragons. So I'm like, well, were the Tanuki and the Kitsune also alive during the time of the Seventh Sovereign? I don't know, but I just included it anyway because it seemed like a bigger thing. So they warred. So the Tanuki actually lived in Inazuma and ruled over it. And then the Kitsune, it just says the Kitsune came to Inazuma and immediately started warring with the Tanuki for Inazuma, for rule over over Inazuma. They warred for 800 years. It literally says they warred for 800 years and then another 800 years for a total of 1600 years. Eventually the Tanuki lost, though it says the Tanuki are stubborn and they would not admit to losing, but the Tanuki end up losing and they hand over the sacred Sakura tree to the Kitsune. And now the Kitsune are in charge of that and, they get dominion over the land. Like I said, one source says that it happened pre-humanity, but some of the other timeline events that it mentions, it doesn't necessarily make sense that it happened in the Old World, though it could have. I'm just not sure. I just included it because it seemed to be kind of like a bigger story point to know that they warred. And what actually ended up happening is the Tanuki and Kitsune, since they're both shapeshifters, they actually, by the end of the 1600 years of war, it says that they forgot, most of the people involved in the war forgot who they were and what they were fighting for and what side they were on. Because you have Tanuki shapeshifting into Kitsune and Kitsune shapeshifting into Tanuki. And then they'd kind of forget what race they belonged to, if they were originally a Kitsune or originally a Tanuki. And then they forgot what side they were on. It was so muddled by the end of the 1600 years of war, they were like, who am I? And what am I doing? And what side of the war am I on? So they eventually decided to just end the war because everybody was confused as to, like, what was happening. So that's the beef between the Tanuki and the Kitsune. Okay, so after that, I forgot to move the bullet point out, but we have the Tsurumi Island civilization, which, just really quickly, the Tsurumi Island history we know about in-game talks about, like, the Thunderbird era with Rue and everything and the sacrifice of children again, and it was just really awful. But anyway, that's the not family-friendly portion. But there was a civilization which was pre-Thunderbird era, pre the worship of the Thunderbird, that was in Tsurumi Island that was pretty vast. But we know, and I mention this because we know that one of the divine nails that fell on Tsurumi Island, and Tsurumi Island was destroyed shortly after, kind of like with Salvan Dagnir. Tsurumi Island was destroyed shortly after the divine nails fell because of the obviously the actual impact of the divine nail on their civilization, and then because of the rapid weather shifts and climate changes that happened so, like, instantaneously, that it was not sustainable. So they ended up dying off. So that's the Tsurumi Island civilization. Let's see. Okay. And next we're going to talk about, and also this is a picture down here. This is the Tanuki here. On this picture, this is the sacred Sakura tree, which looks like a fox, actually. And then down here we have the Tsurumi Island kind of archway pillar where they would sacrifice the children. Okay. And we're almost done, friends. So, last but certainly not least, we're going to be talking about Sumeru. Okay, so in Sumeru, the biggest, actually both of these points are kind of big. So what we have in Sumeru is the start of the Ai Khanum civilization, which there's been a little bit like another inconsistency, as it said, it was either created by the goddess of flowers or it was created by King Deshret. And then I actually, right before stream, I found a source that says they created it together. Either way, they ended up ruling it together, regardless of who started the civilization. Somehow the goddess of flowers and King Deshret met each other, and they ended up creating or ruling together in the Icanoom civilization, which was in Sumeru Desert. The desert was created for the Jinn, which, if we remember, I know that was so much knowledge ago, but remember that the goddess of flowers was the creator of the Jinn, which came from the bleeding feet, the waters that flowed from her bleeding wounds as she walked the desert for 72 days. The Jinn came to life, right? So that is what ended up happening. They ended up starting the Icanoom civilization, which the brunt of, it's kind of like with most things in the pre-Archon War era, this is kind of the context for the Archon War era. So we don't really talk a ton about what the Icanoom civilization actually does until the Archon War era, because then a lot happens, but that's just kind of the main context, is that it's being ruled by the goddess of flowers, which is Nabu, and it's being ruled by King Deshret. Lastly, we talk about the trio of god kings. So a little bit after Icanoom civilization is started, we don't actually know how many years, but at some point, the goddess of flowers hears of the wisdom of Greater Lord Rukkhadevata and wants to meet her, and they end up becoming friends, and she ends up becoming friends with King Deshret as well, and they then create the trio of god kings. The reason I put this in this section is because we know that Icanoom was still around during the Archon War era, and actually to the end of the Archon War era, because of some evidence I have about King Deshret being offered a Gnosis and rejecting it. And we know that during that time, it literally says, during the time of the Archon War era, King Deshret shared his throne with the trio of god kings. So we know that the main portion of their civilization was happening during the Archon War, and it didn't end till after the Archon War. So most of the information that we would talk about would then come in the Archon War. But just to preface it, at this point, sometime during pre-Archon War, they would have met each other and they would have created that trio of god kings, which this here is King Deshret's throne, the top picture. The middle picture is actually what people think is the Icanoom civilization. It was one of the one-time domains, but it's remnants of the Icanoom civilization. As you can see, they were actually pretty technologically advanced as well. Maybe not in the same exact ways as some of the other technologically advanced civilizations, because they all kind of were technically advanced in some way. Like Conria was technically advanced in alchemy and the creation of life and weapons, and the Gwylie Assembly was very competent and knowledgeable and technologically advanced in terms of engineering and equipment like that. And then they were very architecturally advanced. I can't say that word. Advanced. And they had, obviously some of their machinery has cloaking and invisibility, so they were still advanced in different ways though. So yeah, that is Sumeru, that is the Icanoom civilization that's starting, and the trio of god kings. As I said, this information mainly gives us context for the Archon War era, which we won't be talking about today. We'll be talking about it in a different lore stream. And we'll probably recap some of this information before going into the Archon era when we do get there. But yes, so that is what we got going on. That is the end of the pre-Archon War era. And there's technically at the end of the era, there's no big thing that happens, the divine nails fall and that's the end of the era. Technically it's the start of the next era, which is technically you could say is the same thing, but it's the war breaking out, which is the end of this era and obviously the beginning of the Archon era, or the Archon War era. And then the Gnosis, and then the Seven, and then all that. So that'll be another stream, though. So as we kind of talked about today, we talked about the old world and the Seven Sovereign, and their tyranny, and the world being ruled by elements like pure elemental energy. And we talked about the new world with the primordial one coming down and ruling over, warring with the Seven Sovereign, eventually winning the fight and gaining dominion over the land and recreating the land and restructuring it so that humanity could sustain themselves and could come and live with the primordial one on Teyvat. Then we also talked about the era of darkness, when the second who came, or the second descender, descended down from the heavens and immediately started warring with the primordial one. Kind of all the stuff that happens, all the civilizations that fall, the fall of the Seelie, the fall of the Moon Sisters, all of that kind of information. Which led to eventually the end of the era, where the primordial one wins the battle and casts down the divine nails, which causes more destruction to the mortal realm, but cures the ley lines of the poison that they had been not really injected with, but kind of cures the ley lines of the poison that plagued them. And then lastly, we just kind of talked about the pre-Archon War era, where it was the kind of setting up the context for the Archon War era. Everybody who's left to pick up the pieces was creating various different civilizations that are mentioned. And obviously we haven't even touched everything, because there's lore we don't know about Fontaine, about Natlan, and about Shnesnaya. Like, so we don't even know what these continents were doing during all of this, or like these regions, really, what they were doing during all of this, which will eventually come. I'm guessing as the Fontaine stories continue to come out, we'll get more and more information. And like I said, I didn't cover a ton of Fontaine just because the information's still coming out, and I feel like I didn't have enough knowledge to be able to accurately talk about it. So we just covered all the way up to, like, in terms of the regions, up to Sumeru, because there's a lot of knowledge already out, and people were able to dissect some of the context and then the various books and everything. So yeah, that's it. That's my lore stream. That's all I got for you. That's the end, everybody. So, yes. That is the end of it. And I do want to say a very, very special thanks. Fontaine goes hard with the front. As the only one about to be purged. Yeah, you're right. But I want to say a very, very special thanks to one of my friends who wished to remain anonymous, but I know is watching this. Thank you for collecting all of the photos. I'd say 97% of the photos you saw were done by my friend who went around in the actual game and took screenshots and stuff of all of the images that I gave. So, thank you to my friend, who I know is watching this. I appreciate you. But yes, thanks, Fighter Felix. Thank you so much, Story. You're just for being an evangelist just for the game. Oh boy. Oh boy. Yeah, maybe. I was thinking to myself, I should get like a Genshin t-shirt of some sort. You know what I mean? And then I'll wear it during my Genshin streams. I'm like, I like the game enough. I need to get like a Ganyu t-shirt or something. You know? Like I need something to rep during my Genshin lore streams, because I'm planning on doing more of these, right? So I need some Genshin I need some Genshin merch. You know? Be perfect. I noticed you didn't get any hype train. Have you got to change a setting for account? Oh! You're right, I didn't get a hype train. Isn't a hype train only for partners? I feel like I researched this once previous. No, that's not true, because I feel like one time I almost did get a hype train. Thank you. I'm looking it up real quick. How do I... That's so sad that I didn't get a hype train. I should have caught that sooner. That's so sad. I'm sad I didn't get... I've never gotten a hype train before, and with all of the gifted subs, that would have been a perfect opportunity. How do I do that? I'll have to figure that out after. I know at one point I almost got a hype train when I first hit affiliate, but it didn't happen, and so I guess I don't know why it didn't automatically kick off, because I don't think I changed any settings. Let's see. We'll go here. Well, I'll have to look up the hype train stuff, and I have to rewrite my goals. I just my brain's broken. Thank you so much, everybody, for all the subscriptions, all the gifted subs. I really hope everybody appreciates those. Thank you to those who did gift subs or who resubscribed themselves. You guys are the best. I really appreciate it. I really did not expect to I did not expect for this to be the outcome, but it's like way better than I could have dreamed, so stop! How do I... How do I get a hype train going? I gotta figure it out right now. Can hype trains happen with affiliates? I'm so excited, Story. You really did not have to do that. I'm looking it up. Are you, okay, they're enabled for affiliates. I don't know what's happening. But let me acknowledge, it's like Christmas once a year only. I know, but like it's September. It's Christmas in September. Well, thank you. Story, you just literally blew my mind. The funny thing is I have 59 followers. Literally almost ever, like 98% of my followers now are subscribed to me. When does that ratio ever happen? That's crazy. Thank you so much. I don't deserve it, but I really do appreciate it. I worked so hard. I'm glad you guys are enjoying this lore stream. I'll definitely do it again. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. That's literally crazy that I'm like, I have 50 subscribers and I only have 59 followers. Like literally 98, 99% of my followers are now subscribed. Oh my gosh. You guys, I don't deserve it. Thank you. I want to figure out how to do a hype train. I want that to happen. That's one of my goals. I've never had one happen. I mean, it's too late now, I think, but I'm gonna have to figure that out. I wish there was a search option on the creator dashboard. I want the hype train. I'll have to look it up. Anyway, but thank you so much, everybody. I literally am just like flabbergasted right now. That's like the best way to put it. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But, how do I go to, it says I have to go to my, I'm so stuck on this now. I want to make it work. Well, thank you again, everybody. I really appreciate it. And I hope you've been enjoying, I found it. Yeah, hype train's enabled. That's wild. I don't know how to kick it off. I guess I'm trying to figure out how to kick it off. I don't suppose you can come back in 3 hours for a potential raid? 2 hours and 30 minutes even? Are you streaming? Do you have a big raid? Fair enough. Now I'm all stuck on trying to figure out how to this hype train. It should have kicked off. That's the weird thing, because I have it enabled to auto kick off. I don't know why it didn't. It has 3 different people. Oh. Has to be 3 different people. Oh, I guess I only, but I did have 3 people at least gift, but not within 5 minutes, so that makes sense. 1 person, no matter how generous, cannot start. Bummer. Okay. No, but ASOS can request raid out location. Bummer. That would be good. I was like, I don't think I can stay on today, but if I know when they raid, maybe one day I'll have to do it later. Well, that's not true. I mean, well, it's not true. It is true, but there is always another week, because if I think about it, I'm gonna have to do a late Friday stream probably for one of my goals, because all my friends work on Fridays. So I'm gonna have to plan a stream on a Friday night for that, for the Helldivers goal that we got. Bummer. It'd be great to get a raid today too. That would just be the cherry on top. But I probably need to get other stuff going. Excuse me. Well, my goodness, I just am like, I don't even know what to say anymore. It's just surreal. Thank you, everybody. Story, thank you for donating so many subs, or gifting is the proper terminology. I am sorry we didn't get a hype train, but now that we know how to do it, we'll have to work towards getting that. I don't even know what my next sub goal is. That's crazy. The problem is it'll probably jump back down, because realistically the sub only lasts for a month. But that's great. I'm not complaining. Sorry, I was just verbally processing. But thank you. I really, really, really appreciate it. This is fantastic. Yay for September. I keep wanting to call it Subtober because it's almost October. Thank you so much. I can't believe it. I mean, it was a great time for it. I totally forgot it was Subtober. I did it again. September today. Well, not today, but this month. And it was perfect. It was well timed to do the lore stream. And I really do hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope I was not a bore. I tried to make it pretty interesting. I enjoyed it, even though I'm losing my voice a little bit. I really enjoyed talking about the lore because I'm such a nerd about it. I don't know why. I just love Genshin lore. It's so deep. It's really well thought out. There's only a couple discrepancies in terms of like lore inconsistency. I haven't seen a ton of it. You got a skill. Oh, Story, thank you. Thank you. I really do appreciate that. I do. I do. It's a lot easier, I think, to public speak when you're passionate about it. You know what I mean? As you're saying, it's like, if it's something that you're like, man, I don't care about this, it's like so hard to talk about. But the fact that I really, really am passionate about it and that I like it, it makes it easier for public speaking. So I'm glad you guys liked it. I'm definitely gonna do it again because we gotta talk about Archon War era stuff. Great, thank you, Kindiana. I'm glad you learned a lot. I'm glad you felt it was engaging. Is there an auto cue screen under your... What do you mean by that? An auto cue screen under your monitor. Oh. It's great. It's fantastic. I'm so happy right now. I really am appreciative to you guys. Isn't it funny that I could literally almost say thank you to all my subscribers? Because I guess you guys are all my followers too. I just am laughing at the fact that I have 59 followers and 50 subscribers now. Like, thank you to everybody, because you're all subscribers now. So thank you. It's just wild. My brains can't compute. You guys are the best. I really appreciate it. I just cannot say it enough. I'm so thankful. I'm glad you guys... I am rich this month. I don't know what to do with myself. I'm gonna get myself a coffee. So, thank you for all the gifted subs, for resubscribing yourselves, for subscribing yourselves. Definitely spread the word. We'll have more lore streams if people are interested in that. I was just thinking about it while I was streaming. I was like, I should like edit this and like put it on YouTube. I've been wanting to get a YouTube channel started. I just haven't had time. But now that I've passed my exam for personal training, I don't have to do that again. So I don't have to study every night. You know what I mean? I have more free time. And so I was like, maybe now's the time to start my YouTube channel. You know, I could stream to YouTube. I have not thought that far because I'm not a very big channel. And I didn't want to get too complicated too fast, but that is something that I haven't really thought about, streaming to YouTube. I've heard it's pretty good. Like, people like streaming to YouTube. So I'll have to think about that. I haven't really thought about it. And have messages from both feeds into your screen on chat feed. I didn't know you could do that. That's actually pretty interesting. I didn't know you could do, because all the streamers that I see stream on YouTube like do it separate times. They like stream like Twitch and YouTube, I'm trying to say. They stream separate times, so they'll stream at YouTube one time and Twitch another time. I've never seen it at the same exact time. Facebook is an option. I probably would not stream to Facebook. I mean, I don't rule it out as a possibility, but I'd be more inclined to stream to YouTube than probably Facebook. At least if I'm going to expand platforms, it would probably be to YouTube first, for sure. Man, I'm gonna have to get posted on Twitter more often. I have more time now, everybody. Literally my whole life, I feel like, has been revolving around passing this exam, but now that I've passed it, I don't have to, there's just like chunks of my day left open that I have time to do things now, and that my brain is not all consumed with passing the exam. So, yes! Okay, I think I'm gonna get off soon, here in a minute, because my vocal cords are straining. I can feel it. I've been talking a lot. So I definitely need to give them a rest. But man, again, just thank you, everybody. I really, really appreciate y'all. I appreciate all of the gifted subs. I'm like, It's wild that I'm looking here at this and it says 50 total subs. That's just wild to me. Oh my gosh. But thank you so much, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. The next time I'll be streaming will be Monday at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. You guys are great and fantastic and so generous, and I don't deserve it, and I literally could not do it without y'all. Thanks for the encyclopedia of lore today. Yes, it was an encyclopedia. Get ready for another one. I don't know when. It'll probably be a couple months. Just it takes me a long time to compile information. But we'll do it again sometime. Also, I'm gonna have to figure out, I'm gonna have to prepare. We hit so many goals today. We have so many goals. Okay, I'm gonna plan these out probably over the next month or so, month and a half. We'll be planning. We'll have our rewards. I don't even know how to do that. I have 3 rewards I have to plan now, so I'll figure that out this weekend or so, and then try to get a game plan for the dates for our special reward streams. So that's fantastic. It's a great problem to have. I didn't think I'd have it, but I'm so excited about it, and I'll have to come up with new goals, possibly. We'll have to see, because so, yes. Don't forget the cat cup. You're right. Matcha in a cat cup would be the most adorable. I'll have to do that. Okay, so thank you again so much, everybody. I can't say it enough today. You guys have been so generous to me, and I really appreciate the support. I love streaming, and I love streaming because of you guys. Like I said, doing it by myself would be so lame. I would just be talking to myself in the air, and there's no point to that. So thank you for enjoying my content, and thanks for liking my lore stream today. I put a lot of work into it, and I was so nervous, and I'm glad you guys have enjoyed it and felt like you've learned something. Then I did my job right. So again, thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be able to hand you out these rewards later. I'll work on getting VIPs out. I just hate it because I feel like I'm picking favorites, and that makes me sad. And that's not the case, but that's what it feels like, okay? But I'll get them out so everybody has their VIPs and we don't just have one, right? So thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate it. So make sure you stay safe and make great choices this weekend, and I will see you all on Monday at 7 p.m. You guys are fantastic, and I love you guys. Have a great one, everybody. Bye, 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 bye.